Chapter 1432. Mo Xia was the first to speak, asking expectantly, did Tian Chanzi agree? He had always wanted to examine Tian Chanzi's body and see if the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul was still in his body. But Tian Chanzi had flatly refused, so he could only wait. He had already become a loner and only had this sliver of hope. If he didn't wait, there was no other way. Tang Jing knew Mo Xia's thoughts and said, Tian Chanzi is still considering it. I have other matters to discuss with you. Mo Xia's face immediately revealed a disappointed expression. He made an "oh" sound and asked dully, what is it? Other than the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul, he was no longer interested in anything else. I want to forge a talisman. You are an expert in this field, so I hope to obtain your help. Forge? Mo Xia raised his head in shock and stared at him in disbelief. Yes, I want to forge a treasure sword. The materials are all prepared and everything is ready except for the east wind. Mo Xia laughed dryly, I'm that east wind? What's so difficult about forging a treasure sword that you need my help with? Forging talismans was a common thing for cultivators, but forging top-level talismans, such as holy tools, was not so easy. It was not something anyone could do. Tang Jing could only patiently explain, I want to forge a peerless godly sword. Peerless godly sword? Mo Xia was slightly startled, then he laughed loudly and snorted, peerless godly sword, you think you can forge a peerless godly sword just because you shout a slogan? He had rich experience in forging and knew that a peerless godly sword could only be found by chance. For example, his Ganjiang sword was a peerless godly sword. But in order to forge the Ganjiang sword, he had prepared for a long time. Even the materials were all heavenly treasures and were not common goods. He did not believe that Tang Jing could find materials comparable to the Ganjiang sword. Tang Jing ignored the mockery in Mo Xia's words and said calmly, of course I'm not shouting a slogan. Don't master forgers like you always want to forge a peerless talisman? Now that the opportunity is in front of you, you don't want to give it a try. Could it be that you don't dare? Tang Jing changed his mind at the last minute. Originally, he wanted to persuade Mo Xia with his emotions and reason so that he could ask Mo Xia for help. Now, it seemed that he was not interested in anything other than the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor. Since that was the case, then he could only use other methods to move him. Provocation was a good method, and with Mo Xia's intelligence, he would definitely see through it. However, Tang Jing would still do so because he believed that for a master weapon refiner, the temptation of refining a peerless divine weapon was definitely not to be underestimated. As long as Mo Xia saw the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron, she would definitely be interested in helping him. When Mo Xia heard Tang Jing's words, the corners of her mouth curled up in ridicule. She said, you're underestimating me. Do you think this will work on me? Tang Jing didn't think much of it and said generously, whether it's useful or not depends on what I offer you. Seeing Tang Jing so confident, Mo Xia's interest was instead piqued. She said, I'd like to see what you can offer me. Then why don't you come with me and you'll know. Tang Jing walked in a certain direction. Mo Xia hesitated for a moment before following. Not long after, Tang Jing stopped in his tracks. In front of him was a huge sphere, as black as ink. This seemingly ordinary black sphere was the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron. Back then, it had absorbed Dizang of Goguryu's dark side and became like this. From the chains of the past to this huge sphere, the impurities had been completely refined and removed. What was left was the essence of the essence. Mo Xia was originally absent-minded and didn't think much of it. However, when she saw this huge black sphere, her eyes immediately straightened and were deeply attracted. What is this? Although she didn't recognize the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron, she had a pair of fiery eyes and could see that this was definitely not an ordinary item. Even the material she used to refine the Ganjiang sword was slightly inferior. Tang Jing relaxed and smiled as if she already knew that she would take the bait. This is the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron, taken from the ghost realm. 9 Serenities' mysterious iron, taken from the ghost realm. Mo Xia muttered to himself, deeply shocked. Although it was the first time she heard this name, the words, taken from the ghost realm, firmly attracted her. After a long time, her gaze reluctantly moved from the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron to Tang Zheng's face. Her expression changed continuously and was very interesting. How did you find this 9 Serenities' mysterious iron? Tang Zheng smiled indifferently and said, you don't need to worry about that. I just want to know if you have the confidence to refine it into a divine weapon. Of course I have confidence. Mo Xia said without hesitation, you are doubting the skills and dignity of a master refiner. Huh, even you haven't seen the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron before and you dare to boast like this? Tang Zheng asked. That's because you don't know my refining level. As long as you give me time, I will properly study the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron. I will definitely be able to make it into a divine weapon. Mo Xia said confidently. I will refine it now. Now? Mo Xia stared at him as if he was looking at an amateur and said, you are too impatient. I don't even know the properties of the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron. I don't even know what kind of true fire is needed to melt it. You telling me now is the biggest joke in the world. Tang Zheng was still very calm and said, no matter what kind of true fire you use, you will not be able to melt it. Because it is not something from the human world, true fire will naturally not be able to refine it. That's because your strength is too weak and the quality of your true fire is not good enough. Mo Xia said solemnly, not believing in Tang Zheng's ability. Tang Zheng did not argue and said, then you can give it a try. Mo Xia proudly turned his head and activated his power. He extended his palm and a ball of flame jumped in his palm. This ball of flame also attracted Tang Zheng's attention. This ball of flame contained a great amount of power and was a ball of 6th grade true fire. This was the highest quality true fire. For a weapon refining master, this was the most important prerequisite. If one did not have a high quality true fire, it would be impossible to refine a divine weapon. Mo Xia activated his true fire and with a whoosh, the true fire flew out and accurately landed on top of the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron. Then, the true fire turned into threads and covered the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron like a spider web. The big black ball was immediately covered with a layer of fire. It was dazzling and added a sense of mystery. Tang Zheng was firmly attracted. The weapon refining master's first move was extraordinary and was completely different from his normal refining methods. This time, seeing Mo Xia refine with my own eyes will be of great benefit to me. In the future, when I refine, I will definitely be able to refine even higher quality treasures. Tang Zheng was full of interest as he stared at this scene with shining eyes. Mo Xia proudly raised her head and purposely glanced at Tang Zheng from the corner of her eyes as she teasingly said, look carefully, this is true weapon forging. Your previous weapon forging was just child's play. Tang Zheng smiled but did not say anything. He had an expression of watching a good show. Chapter 1433. The mysterious 9 nether iron under the roasting of the true fire reflected a strange light, but it did not melt. In fact, there was not even a trace of melting. Tang Zheng's mouth gradually hooked into a smile as he looked at Mo Xia with interest. Mo Xia's expression also had a subtle change. Previously, he had vowed that refining the mysterious 9 nether iron would be a piece of cake. But after a long time without any reaction, he finally realized that something was wrong. From the corner of his eyes, he caught a glimpse of Tang Zheng's expression and his heart skipped a beat. He clenched his teeth and made up his mind. I don't believe that I can't handle this mysterious 9 nether iron. He gathered his strength, the light of the true fire constantly flickering, determined to refine the mysterious 9 nether iron. After a long time, the mysterious 9 nether iron still did not have any reaction. His expression finally changed again and again, becoming very ugly and even a bit resentful, as if saying, why can't my true fire refine this big black ball? Tang Zheng finally opened his mouth, how is it? How much longer do you need me to wait? Mo Xia raised his head and looked at him with a complicated expression, as if he was thinking about what to say. After a while, he said, why are you in such a hurry? I've only just started. Tang Zheng laughed dryly. Is that so? But so much time has already passed, you're taking too long to warm up. After a slight pause, he quickly changed the topic. Don't waste your energy, you can't refine it. Mo Xia was clearly not convinced and rolled his eyes. For a master refiner, not being able to refine a raw material was the greatest shame. This mysterious 9 nether iron is not something that true fire can refine. Tang Zheng said decisively. Mo Xia said in disbelief, then if it can't be refined, what kind of peerless divine weapon are you going to use it to refine? Of course I have a way. Tang Zheng said mysteriously. What way? You'll see in a moment. Tang Zheng suppressed Mo Xia's arrogance and no longer kept him in suspense. Come with me, I'll let you see. Tang Zheng's thoughts moved and the surrounding scenery quickly changed. In a flash, they had already left Sumera Heavens and arrived in the secret room. When Li Xiaotian saw Mo Xia, his pupils couldn't help but shrink. Mo Xia's attention was not on Li Xiaotian, but on Tang Zheng. In Sumera world, Tang Zheng was only a strand of divine sense, so she could not see anything. However, in the real world, Mo Xia immediately discovered the subtlety. He stared at Tang Zheng without blinking his eyes. His voice also rose by several decibels as he cried out involuntarily, How did your cultivation increase again? He was actually unable to see through Tang Zheng's cultivation. Without a doubt, this was a sign that his cultivation had increased. Back then, he could still see through Tang Zheng's cultivation, but in just a few short weeks, what exactly happened that made Tang Zheng's cultivation advance by leaps and bounds? Tang Zheng smiled but did not say anything, pretending to be mysterious. Mo Xia knew that even if he asked, he would not get an answer, but his thoughts had completely changed. If it was before, he could still look down on Tang Zheng, but now he absolutely did not have the slightest bit of such thoughts. Tang Zheng did not use the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul to threaten him, and he could not threaten Tang Zheng at all, so his status was even lower. Of course, if the Yellow Emperor was resurrected, this situation would change. Mo Xia's gaze turned slightly, inadvertently falling on Li Xiaotian's body, and his pupils once again widened. He blinked his eyes to confirm that he wasn't seeing things. He really couldn't see through her cultivation. He had never placed Li Xiaotian in his eyes. After all, a small martial artist might be very powerful to an ordinary person. However, in his eyes, Li Xiaotian was not much different from an ordinary person. Why couldn't he see through her? Wasn't she just a martial artist? He could not figure it out no matter how much he thought about it, and his expression naturally did not look any better. Li Xiaotian's mind was sharp. Her eyelids twitched, and she saw some clues in his heart, but she did not pay attention to his shock. Mo Xia looked at Li Xiaotian, and then turned to look at Tang Zheng. These two juniors, he could not see through them. This was too strange. He really wanted to ask again and get to the bottom of it. However, he swallowed the words back down. If he really got to the bottom of it, the other party might not tell the truth, and the one who would lose face would be him. When he thought of this, he forcibly suppressed his impulse, but it was difficult to conceal the stormy waves that surged in his heart. Tang Zheng also saw through his thoughts, and smiled without saying anything. In his heart, the more mysterious he was, the more intimidating he was, so he did not dare to act rashly. Mo Xia took a deep breath and changed the topic. Otherwise, his little heart might really break. Didn't you say that you can refine the mysterious underworld iron? How do you refine it? Tang Zheng did not directly answer, but said, there is still a soul in the mysterious underworld iron. This soul is extraordinary. Do you have the confidence to control it during the refining process and turn it into an artifact spirit? Soul? Mo Xia's eyes widened in curiosity, staring at the mysterious underworld iron in the secret room as if he could see through it. However, after carefully staring at it for a long time, he could not see where the soul was. In fact, he could not even sense it. For an artifact refining grandmaster, this was not a small blow. Fortunately, he had suffered several blows in a row just now, and had become numb. He simply did not ask any more questions, and let Tang Zheng continue. Tang Zheng laughed in his heart and continued, "This soul is very strong. If you are not careful and let him escape from his bindings, not only you, even I will not be able to do anything to him. Furthermore, none of us here will be able to leave this place alive." Mo Xie's heart trembled. He knew that Tang Zheng did not have to deliberately lie to scare him. He really wanted to ask where Tang Zheng found such a fierce character. However, he did not ask, but sighed and said, "If you use such a powerful soul as the artifact spirit of the sword, then how powerful will the artifact refining be? This will depend on the results of everyone's cooperation." Tang Zheng was also unable to give an answer. In fact, this was a risky move, but this risk was worth it. Mo Xie's heart was bewildered. After a long time, he finally said, "All right, I'll do it. I want to see what kind of peerless artifact refining will be." As an artifact refining grandmaster, witnessing or personally refining a peerless artifact refining was a huge temptation. Tang Zheng finally smiled. Although he had already expected this result, hearing it with his own ears, the stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. "Then we will begin now. You will witness the birth of a true peerless artifact refining," Tang Zheng said in an imposing manner, giving Li Xiaotian a look. Li Xiaotian nodded slightly, walked in front of the mysterious 9 underworlds iron, stretched out his hands, and a ball of flame burned between his hands. Huh? Mo Xie looked curiously at this ball of ghost fire. With his eyesight, he immediately determined that this was not true fire. For a martial artist to be able to summon such a strange flame, it was very strange. Tang Zheng looked at Mo Xie and explained, "This is ghost fire. Only it can refine the mysterious 9 underworlds iron." "Ghost fire, isn't that also an item from the ghost realm?" Mo Xie asked in surprise. Tang Zheng nodded. Mo Xie's heart became more and more shocked. How could an item from the ghost realm be used by a living person? This Li Xiaotian also hid many secrets. The younger generation will surpass us in time. While speaking, Li Xiaotian urged the ghost fire to wrap around the mysterious 9 underworlds iron. The black light constantly flickered, and not long after, the mysterious 9 underworlds iron was like melted candy, transforming from a solid state to a liquid state. After a while, the mysterious 9 underworlds iron completely transformed into a liquid state, but it did not flow in all directions. Instead, it was still a big black ball. The liquid mysterious 9 underworlds iron was constantly rotating, like a small snake circling in place. This scene deeply attracted the 3 people, and they stared at it with wide eyes. Shwa! Suddenly, a ray of light rushed out from the mysterious 9 underworlds iron. The mysterious 9 underworlds iron bulged, as if something was trying to rush out from the mysterious 9 underworlds iron. Tang Zheng's heart trembled as he shouted, "Be careful." His mouth muttered some words, and golden Sanskrit words flew out, condensing into a golden swastika character in the air, covering the mysterious 9 underworlds iron. The bulge immediately subsided, disappearing little by little. It was the first time Mo Xie had seen such an amazing scene, and he was even more surprised by the Sanskrit words that Tang Zheng was muttering. The terrifying power contained in the golden swastika character made his heart beat faster. "That soul wants to rush out?" Mo Xie asked. He could tell at a glance. Tang Zheng nodded. "Yes, we must not let it rush out. Dizang of Goguryeo once said that the strength of the dark side would increase day by day, and it could not be trapped in the mysterious 9 underworlds iron forever, so he could not help but worry about the possibility of the dark side rushing out." Mo Xie nodded thoughtfully. "No wonder, we must be very careful." He was not scared off, but instead became more interested. With such a powerful soul as the artifact spirit, the magic weapon refined would definitely be extraordinary. Creating such a peerless divine weapon from his own hands would be a very satisfying thing. The rest of the work will depend on the 2 of us. Tang Zheng stretched out his hand and a furnace appeared in his palm. It quickly changed, and he gently threw it. The moment the furnace fell to the ground, it returned to its original appearance. The 9 revolving pill furnace, this was the furnace he used to refine weapons. Although there was a master refiner like Immerse, Tang Zheng would not just sit back and do nothing. With the two of them working together, he would be able to learn many things. Moreover, if Immerse was the only one refining, what if he tampered with it and the refined weapon became Immerse's? Then wouldn't he have suffered a double loss? He definitely would not allow this to happen. Immerse looked at the 9 revolving pill furnace with contempt and said, "With this little furnace, you want to refine a peerless divine weapon?" "Can't I?" Tang Zheng asked back. Immerse forcibly suppressed the word "can't." From a professional point of view, it was not impossible. It was just a bit more troublesome. Immerse gave Tang Zheng a deep look as if she was deep in thought. She immediately understood his intentions and knew that he was on guard against him. But he had no way to resist, so he coldly snorted and said, "Then let's begin." Tang Zheng activated the 9 revolving pill furnace, and the carvings of birds, fish, and insects on the outside seemed to come alive, swimming around. Chapter 1434. The mysterious 9 Serenities iron flew into the 9 revolving pill furnace and a burst of black light immediately shot up into the sky. A buzzing sound came from the furnace like a clap of thunder, causing people's hearts to be filled with fear. Immerse's eyes were bright and full of expression as he stared at the furnace. Under his gaze, thousands of changes were occurring within the furnace. The liquid mysterious 9 Serenities iron seemed to have a life of its own as it continuously rotated like the earth. Traces of ghost fire penetrated the mysterious 9 Serenities iron, and not long after, it had already merged into the core area. Immerse personally witnessed the power of the ghost fire and was extremely shocked. Tang Zheng glanced at him and said, "Your main task is to find a way to merge that soul into my divine sword." Immerse recovered from his shock and looked up at him, urging, "Don't waste time." When Tang Zheng heard this, he silently circulated his energy. Just like before when he was refining treasures, he quickly began to act. The liquid mysterious 9 Serenities iron was stretched out by the energy he released, little by little forming the shape of a sword. However, things were not that simple and an unexpected change immediately occurred. The dark side of the Dizang of Goguryeo in the black sphere flared up like a malignant tumor, immediately blocking the mysterious 9 Serenities iron, causing Tang Zheng to be unable to continue stretching it. Naturally, the divine sword would not be able to form. What do we do? Immerse was helpless and could only ask for help from Tang Zheng, looking at him with a burning gaze. Tang Zheng calmly smiled and casually said, "Leave it to me." He chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra and a lotus flew out from his mouth. A lotus flower bloomed in his mouth. After Tang Zheng's cultivation increased, his comprehension of the Ksitigarbha Sutra also increased to another level. After chanting the Ksitigarbha Sutra, his reaction was also completely different. When he saw the golden light of the lotus flower, Immerse's heart trembled. He thought that this brat had too many tricks up his sleeve and the power of this lotus flower could not be underestimated. He even more so did not dare to slight Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng naturally did not know that there was such an unexpected effect. He only wanted to use the Ksitigarbha Sutra to suppress the dark side of Dizang of Goguryeo. The lotus was more powerful than the individual Sanskrit words. It quickly suppressed the dark side of Dizang of Goguryeo, and the blocked area was slowly unblocked. Not long after, the 9 underworld mysterious iron was elongated, and the prototype of the divine sword had already taken shape. Immerse couldn't help but take a few more glances at Tang Zheng. He could clearly feel the power of that soul, but Tang Zheng's brilliant lotus flower was able to suppress it so easily. This skill was truly not ordinary. That being said, the process was far from simple. The dark side of Dizang of Goguryeo would definitely make a comeback. This was the consensus of all of them. Hiss! A sharp cry rang out. The dark side that had ceased all activities was struggling with all its might. This cry came from him. This voice seemed to have a soul-stirring charm, causing one's heart to sway. Immerse's frown deepened. He was too curious as to who this soul belonged to. A normal soul would not be so powerful. Tang Zhang's heart trembled. He urged Mo Xia, don't just look. Think of a way to fuse the soul with the sword. Mo Xia glanced at him. His hands formed a seal and he muttered something. Although they were so close, Tang Zhang could not clearly hear what he was chanting. But it was definitely some kind of secret technique. Its power immediately manifested. A ray of light shot out from his hand and attached itself to the 9 underworld mysterious iron. It slowly seeped in. This ray of light could penetrate the 9 underworld mysterious iron. It was obvious how powerful it was. This is a bit interesting. Tang Zhang's eyes lit up as he stared at the 9 underworld mysterious iron. Especially that ray of light. When the ray of light came into contact with the dark side of Dizang of Goguryeo, the dark side clearly rejected it and instantly repelled the ray of light. Hiss. Mo Xia sucked in a breath of cold air. He seemed to be shocked by the counterattack of the dark side. His eyes flickered and gradually became firm. He did not say a word. His expression was incomparably serious and even somewhat gloomy. Boom! The ray of light approached the dark side again. This time, it did not directly clash with the dark side. When it did not directly touch the dark side, the ray of light stopped and began to rotate on its own. In an instant, a small vortex of stars was formed. Although the 9 underworld mysterious iron was incomparably black, this ray of light was very dazzling, so Tang Zhang could clearly see everything. This vortex seemed to have magical power. The dark side was directly sucked into the black hole. Tang Zhang and Li Xiaotian looked at each other. There was some surprise in their eyes. They had seen the power of the dark side. They did not expect it to be unable to resist this vortex. What kind of magic did this vortex have? Mo Xia confidently curled up a mysterious smile. He thought to himself, this is my exclusive refining technique. It is specially used to fuse souls and magic treasures. It is simply the nemesis of souls. How can it not be able to do anything to him? Tang Zhang did not see the specific magic, but he knew that there was a glimmer of hope. Thus, he quickly calmed his mind and chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra, continuing to suppress the dark side. Under the pressure from both sides, the dark side was immediately at a disadvantage. The bulge slowly disappeared. Under the contrast of Mo Xia's light, the dark side was visible to the naked eye. It was a small ball of strange light. It was like ink, but it was fundamentally different from the 9 underworld mysterious iron. As long as one looked carefully, they would be able to see the difference between the two. Withdraw. Suddenly, Mo Xia roared. His entire body emitted a faint light. The vortex rapidly rotated faster and faster, and the suction force became stronger and stronger. The dark side was sucked in with a whoosh, as if it was about to be completely sucked into the vortex. Suddenly, the dark side stopped, as if it had hit the brakes. It dangerously stopped beside the vortex, just a little bit more and it would be sucked in. Mo Xia's expression immediately became gloomy. This result was outside of his expectations. In his original expectations, the dark side was successfully sucked into the vortex. Tang Zhang's expression was normal. After all, he was very clear about the power of the dark side. Any situation or accident would not be excessive. Mo Xia clenched his teeth. He was competing with the dark side. He had already boasted. If he gave up halfway and failed, that would be a great humiliation. He took a deep breath. The light on his body became more and more intense. It was as if he wanted to completely suck the dark side into the vortex in one go. This vortex was out of the ordinary. Once the dark side was sucked in, it would completely fuse with the magic tool. This was because this was the most crucial point in refining. This vortex was the bridge between the soul and the magic tool. How dare you refine me and make me the tool spirit? A hysterical and bone-chilling voice suddenly rang out. Tang Zhang's heart tightened. This was the voice of the dark side of Dizang of Goguryeo. He was forced to the final juncture and had no choice but to speak. He was imprisoned by the 9 underworld mysterious iron and suppressed by the Ksitigarbha Sutra. He had to bear the double pressure. Under this kind of situation, he was still able to speak. Apart from his profound cultivation, he had also used up a large portion of his strength. This was his last chance to speak. If he did not succeed, he would never have the chance to speak again. The dark side was very clear about this, so he had no choice but to do this. This sound shocked Immerse, and he subconsciously relaxed his guard. The dark side saw the opportunity and quickly retreated. Stop. Seeing this, Tang Zheng hurriedly shouted to stop. If the dark side really escaped, it would be a big problem. Li Xiaotian was also very clear about this. He hurriedly shouted, "Quickly stop him." Immerse finally came back to his senses and asked loudly, "Who is he?" "I am the Dezong of Goguryeo. If you act so recklessly, you will suffer a calamity and suffer my monstrous anger." The dark side continued to scare people. Immerse's expression changed again and again. It was already extremely ugly. Who is the Dezong of Goguryeo? He had never heard of this name before. But just from the situation at the scene, he could already tell that the Dezong of Goguryeo was not an ordinary person. "You actually don't know who I am?" The dark side was very angry. In this world, there was actually someone who did not know his great name. Tang Zheng was also stunned for a moment, and then he came to a realization. It was not strange that Immerse did not know, because he was a person from tens of thousands of years ago. At that time, the Dezong of Goguryeo might not have appeared. Even if he appeared, the understanding between the two worlds was very little. Immerse's heart palpitated, but he was not frightened. His eyes became firm, and he said sternly, "So what if you are the Dezong of Goguryeo? If I, Immerse, want to refine a magic treasure, no one can stop me." Whoosh! He stretched out his finger and pointed at the 9 Serenities mysterious iron. Blood flew out from the tip of his finger. It was incomparably red and fell on the 9 Serenities mysterious iron. Immediately, a line of blood appeared on the 9 Serenities mysterious iron. It kept changing and finally turned into a blood talisman. The blood talisman attached to the vortex and disappeared in a flash. The vortex's light increased greatly, and there was a trace of blood light in it. "What did you do?" The dark side screamed, but it was useless. With a whoosh, he flew toward the vortex and no longer had the strength to resist. The screams became more and more intense, echoing in the secret room as if they could pierce people's eardrums. Li Xiaotian subconsciously covered his ears with both hands. Tang Zheng frowned and used his qi to dissolve all of this. Immerse's heart was in his throat. This was a battle that concerned his reputation. If he lost, then he would not have the face to say that he knew how to refine weapons. He would not even have the courage to continue refining weapons. Seeing the dark side approaching the vortex step by step, his heart almost jumped out of his chest. Tang Zheng was a smart person and immediately guessed the clues. This was a critical moment, and success or failure depended on this. His breathing quickened, and his gaze was firmly attracted to this scene. "Break. What are you looking at? Hurry up and form the sword." Immerse urged Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng felt as if he had just awoken from a dream, as this was not the time to watch a show. He hurriedly activated his inner energy and controlled the 9 revolving pill furnace. Bit by bit, he used his energy on the 9 revolving pill furnace, refining the 9 Serenities mysterious iron step by step. There was no doubt that the refining process this time was more difficult than any of the previous times. It was more significant, and he comprehended more things. When he saw the sword form, the joy in his heart was like a bomb, exploding and merging into his every cell. He was incomparably happy. Chapter 1435. After the long sword was formed, only the weapon spirit was left. If the weapon spirit was formed, then the soul must be integrated into the sword body. Dezong of Goguryeo's dark side had been attracted to the edge of the whirlpool. The whirlpool was getting faster and faster, and the dark side had no way to escape. I hate. The dark side dragged out the last word. It could no longer struggle and was sucked into the whirlpool. Chapter 1436. When the divine weapon was completed, there was a sound in his mind, because the weapon spirit and sword spirit had appeared. He could clearly feel the existence of the weapon spirit, and that lively voice clearly entered his ears. This voice was still Dizang of Goguryu's voice, but it was less gloomy and more lively. The resounding sword cry calmed down. Master. The sword spirit respectfully called out. Tang Zheng was in a trance. Dizang of Goguryo actually called him master, although it was the dark side of Dizang of Goguryo, but it was also a part of Dizang of Goguryo. He took a deep breath, and once again focused his attention on the dense qi. The sharp sword qi and light gradually dissipated, leaving behind a dense fog. Wang. Another strange sound came out from the dense qi. This was not the sword cry, but another sound. 9 revolving pill furnace. Tang Zheng secretly exclaimed in his heart as he saw through the true identity of this voice. The divine sword had been completed, and the 9 revolving pill furnace had also been affected, soaring to the sky, directly leveling up. This was all due to the divine sword. The refining process would also receive feedback. If a peerless divine weapon was refined, then the user would benefit greatly, and even advance by leaps and bounds. This was a process that complemented each other. The materials for a peerless divine weapon were naturally not ordinary goods. When refining, the furnace would also absorb the spiritual energy and energy of these materials. But the 9 revolving pill furnace would benefit and advance to the next realm. This was something that could not be estimated. Wang wang. The sound of the 9 revolving pill furnace became more and more vigorous, like the sound of a mighty army's horn, and also like the sound of surging waves. Tang Zheng's heart also surged with waves, as he stared at the dense qi without blinking. Suddenly, a ray of light shot out, illuminating the large secret room, as if a burst of fresh fragrance assaulted his senses. Tang Zheng's head twitched. He knew that the puzzle was about to be solved. The dense qi gradually dissipated in all directions, but the multicolored light still filled the secret room. When the dense qi completely dissipated, the multicolored light shone on Tang Zheng, adding a lot of mystery to him. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace slowly rotated, gradually slowing down. The birds, beasts, flowers, plants, fish, and insects seemed to be on the verge of coming out of the furnace. Tang Zheng stared at the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he exclaimed, "The 9 revolving alchemy furnace has become a heaven-grade magic treasure?" It was once a heaven-grade transcendent artifact, but it was destroyed later on, and its grade dropped too much. Could it be that it had now recovered its original appearance, and actually advanced to become a heaven-grade transcendent artifact? Tang Zheng was pleasantly surprised as he stared at the 9 revolving pill furnace with anticipation. However, a voice interrupted his thoughts. This is a sacred artifact. Sacred weapon? Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment. Looking at the source of the voice, it was actually Immerse. With his fiery eyes and rich experience, he was able to see through the mystery with a single sentence. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace was originally not a heaven-grade transcendent artifact? If that was the case, then wouldn't it be in a much better condition than before? Then it would be able to refine even more powerful transcendent artifacts. This was not the least bit inferior to an offensive transcendent artifact. In fact, it might even be better. As for what grade of transcendent artifact the 9 revolving alchemy furnace could refine, it was still unknown. Since it was a sacred artifact, then what about its transcendent artifact spirit? Tang Zheng quickly circulated his qi, but he did not discover the transcendent artifact spirit. He immediately frowned and circulated his qi. He had to find out what was going on. But in the end, he gave up. This was because he did not feel the transcendent artifact spirit. Aside from the 9 revolving alchemy furnace's qi and quality being higher than before, there was nothing special about it. He turned his head to look at Immerse and directly asked, "Why can't I feel its transcendent artifact spirit %3F?" Mo Xia gave a meaningful smile and said, "This is the unordinary part of transcendent artifacts. Let me ask you first, what do you think is the difference between transcendent artifacts and other transcendent artifacts?" Tang Zheng tilted his head and looked at him suspiciously. After a while, he muttered to himself, "Between the two, besides their different uses, what else is different?" Seeing that Tang Zheng did not hit the nail on the head, Mo Xia proudly said, "I thought you knew everything, but it seems like you are only a layman when it comes to transcendent artifacts." Tang Zheng blushed with shame. Transcendent artifacts were all taught to him by Tian Chanzi. The other part was comprehended by him himself. This was equivalent to an unorthodox method. There was no systematic learning or training. He could not help but admit that Mo Xia was worthy of being called a transcendent artifact master. From Tang Zheng's level, he was able to deduce that he was a layman. Although this sentence was not pleasant to hear, it was the genuine truth. He did not know much about transcendent artifacts. Many aspects were taken for granted. There was no systematic knowledge or learning. He was not ashamed to ask and humbly asked for advice. "In your opinion, what is the difference between the two?" Mo Xia smiled but did not speak. Seeing that Tang Zheng was indeed humbly asking for advice, he mysteriously said after a while, "Of course there is a difference. Normally, when a transcendent artifact reaches the transcendent artifact level, the transcendent artifact spirit will automatically jump out. Therefore, there is no need to look for the transcendent artifact spirit. It will be easy to find the transcendent artifact spirit, such as your sword spirit." Tang Zheng slightly nodded. He was very clear about this point, but there must be some inside mystery that he did not know. As expected, Mo Xia changed the topic and said, "However, transcendent artifacts are completely different from ordinary transcendent artifacts. When it reaches the transcendent artifact level, its transcendent artifact spirit will not appear on its own." "The transcendent artifact spirit will not appear on its own?" Tang Zheng's eyes widened in astonishment. This was the first time he had heard of such a theory. Mo Xia did not care about his reaction. Instead, he smiled and pointed at the 9 revolving pill furnace and said, "Do you see the vivid and lifelike carvings on its walls?" Tang Zheng nodded. Of course he saw it. It was as if it was coming to life. Even a blind person could see it. Only, what did this have to do with them? He really could not figure it out. He could only ask, "What is going on?" Mo Xia mysteriously said, "The artifact spirit of the refining treasure is hidden in this mural. The refining process of a refining treasure is extraordinary, and the birds and beasts in this mural are not that simple. Many of them are real souls that have entered the 9 revolving alchemy furnace and were refined into this shape." Real souls of birds and beasts? Tang Zheng was shocked. This was the first time he had heard of such a thing. He had always thought that these were just lifeless carvings. He never thought that there would be such a bizarre inside story. Your transcendent artifact spirit is hidden in one of the souls. If you want to find it, you must understand these souls well. Only then will you be able to find the transcendent artifact spirit. Mo Xia said. Find the transcendent artifact spirit from all these souls? Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. He thought that he had succeeded and the other matters were not worth mentioning. He never thought that there would be such a complicated matter. Then how would he find it? Chapter 1437. When Mo Xia heard Tang Zheng's question and saw his anxious appearance, he lightly said, "This is something I can't help with. The 9 revolving pill furnace is your artifact and only you understand it the best. Finding the artifact spirit from these spirits is your job and only you can do it." Tang Zheng shook his head and looked at him deeply, not wasting his energy to ask. Mo Xia's attitude was already very clear. No matter how he asked, there would be no result, so there was no need to waste his breath. His eyes moved from the outside of the 9 revolving pill furnace to the inside. He immediately locked onto an item that was emitting a sharp aura. A sword was silently floating in the middle of the cauldron, emitting a mysterious luster. It also had an irresistible aura. His gaze was firmly attracted to her, and he couldn't take his eyes off of her at all. Mo Xia and Li Xiaotian's eyes were also attracted to it. After a long time, Mo Xia exclaimed, "It really is a peerless divine sword." If he made such a claim, then it was even more obvious that this divine weapon was extraordinary. Li Xiaotian smiled brilliantly. He was even happier than if he had obtained a divine weapon. He happily looked at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng suppressed the excitement in his heart and stretched out his hand. When his hand reached above the 9 revolving pill furnace, the godly general began to tremble non-stop and the sword hum became even louder and louder like thunder. "Come!" Tang Zheng roared and his 5 fingers grasped the air. With a "so" sound, the divine sword seemed to have a reaction and flew into his palm. The moment the divine sword fell into his palm, he felt as if his flesh and blood were connected. He and the sword seemed to have become one, man and sword as one. Mo Xia and Li Xiaotian stared at him. Seeing his expression change, Li Xiaotian hurriedly asked with concern, "How is it?" Mo Xia was very experienced and asked with great interest, "Do you have a very wonderful feeling that you have never had with other magic treasures?" Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and nodded. "How did you know?" I'm a master blacksmith." "Of course I know." Mo Xia said meaningfully, his gaze turning deep. "Back then, when I forged the Ganjiang sword, I had the same feeling. This feeling of being connected to one's bones can only be felt by magic treasures refined with one's own blood." When the answer was revealed, Tang Zheng suddenly realized that it was because of his efforts. It is precisely because of this that the power of magic treasures is even greater. Of course, if a normal person wants to use their heart's blood to refine a magic treasure, that is only a fool's dream. Only a true master refiner can do this. Mo Xia said with pride. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes. Wasn't that a compliment? Mo Xia wasn't embarrassed at all and continued to speak. "This magic treasure of yours has fused with your blood. Aside from you, no one else can use it. This is the uniqueness of a magic treasure refined with one's own blood. Only I can use it?" Tang Zheng was shocked by this news. If that was the case, then he wouldn't have to worry about the magic treasure being stolen by others. The War Soul sword being taken away by Qi Yu had always made Tang Zheng brooding. Now that he didn't have to worry about this problem, of course it was a blessing. Mo Xia stared straight at Tang Zheng and said, "That is indeed the case. Isn't happiness coming too suddenly?" Tang Zheng took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. He said, "That is indeed the case. Then you have to remember that it was me who urged this matter. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have been able to forge a peerless divine weapon with such powerful materials. Instead, you would have destroyed it," Mo Xia bluntly reminded. Tang Zheng looked at him thoughtfully and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, I will naturally remember this. As for your request, I also know. I will persuade Tian Chanzi to agree to your request." If this peerless divine weapon didn't have such an effect, he wouldn't have made this promise. After all, the two of them were originally opponents. But this divine weapon had exceeded his expectations. Mo Xia's role in it was undeniable and he couldn't ignore it at all. He was a person who would repay a little bit of kindness with a drop of water. Mo Xia had indeed helped him a lot, so he would naturally repay Mo Xia. After Mo Xia heard these words, he was extremely excited. His eyes lit up and he said with anticipation, "Then I will wait for your good news. I hope you will not forget what you said today." He was very clear that his hopes were all placed on Tang Zheng. If not for his help, Tian Chanzi would definitely not agree to his request. Thus, he worked so hard to refine the divine weapon for Tang Zheng. Furthermore, he even answered his questions and pointed out the key points. Seeing that Tang Zheng didn't seem to be lying, Mo Xia was overjoyed and said, "Now you can name your divine weapon." Name? Tang Zheng stared blankly for a moment. He couldn't help but laugh. He had almost forgotten such an important process. Divine weapons were the same as people. Refining a divine weapon was equivalent to being born. Giving a command was equivalent to giving a name to a person. This name would be its code name in the future and would accompany it for life. A good name would resound in Ding Dang. It would be enough to intimidate the enemy and shake the world. Thus, he couldn't be careless about naming. His expression became serious. His gaze was like water as he looked at the divine sword. Although the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron was completely black, the divine weapon forged was not completely black. Instead, there was a sparkling light flowing around it, making it even more mysterious. Li Xiaotian looked at him nervously and advised, "You don't have to rush this matter." Tang Jing shook his head. He didn't comment. He stared at the divine sword and thought, this divine sword is made from the 9 Serenities' mysterious iron. The weapon spirit is the dark side of Dizang of Goguryeo. It is the result of the combination of the two. Why don't I name it Hidden Mysterious Sword? Hidden Mysterious Sword. He repeated it 3 times in his heart. The more he listened, the better it sounded. His eyes couldn't help but light up. He gradually made a decision and said loudly, "From now on, it will be called Hidden Mysterious Sword." Hidden Mysterious Sword? Mo Xia and Li Xiaotian frowned slightly. Immediately, Li Xiaotian relaxed his brows. He obviously understood the meaning of the name. She pondered for a moment and nodded happily. This name is not bad. It has a profound meaning. Mo Xia curled his lips. He didn't agree. But seeing that Tang Zheng had already made up his mind, he naturally wouldn't raise any objections. After all, it wasn't his sword. Tang Jing gently stroked the divine sword and whispered, "From now on, your name will be Hidden Mysterious Sword." "Yes, Master." "Thank you, Master, for bestowing this name." The sword spirit replied. It buzzed and trembled. The sword didn't stop humming. Rays of light surged from the sword body. It was overflowing with light and was incomparably sharp. It made people not dare to look at it. Tang Jing felt the same way. He could clearly feel the joy of the Hidden Mysterious Sword. He raised the Hidden Mysterious Sword up high and lightly slashed. Whoosh! A ray of sword chi broke through the air. It was about to hit the wall of the secret room. With this force, the wall would collapse immediately. The secret room wouldn't be safe. But what was surprising was that the moment the sword chi was about to touch the wall, it disappeared. It was as if it had never appeared. Good sword. Mo Xia couldn't help but praise loudly. He was a sword expert. He could see the clues. Don't look at how the sword chi didn't destroy the wall. It seemed to be at the end of the line. However, in reality, it was Tang Zheng who controlled the Hidden Mysterious Sword to the point of perfection. It was wonderful to the point of perfection. That was why he could do this. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1438. Hearing Mo Xia praise the Hidden Mysterious Sword as a good sword, Tang Jing smiled and said, "Thank you, the Hidden Mysterious Sword is indeed a rarely seen good sword." Mo Xia faintly sighed and said, "As a person who is obsessed with swordsmanship, I have to say, I am very jealous of you for having such a peerless sword." "I will take your words as a compliment." Tang Zheng said with a smile. His mood was very good. His finger lightly flicked the Hidden Mysterious Sword. A melodious sound of collision entered the ear. "Hidden Mysterious Sword, from now on, you and I will fight side by side. Any strong enemy will be defeated under your 3-foot-long sword." Tang Zheng said to the sword spirit. The sword spirit was awe-inspiring, with a fierce aura said, "Yes, Master." Tang Zheng, congratulations. Li Xiaotian sincerely congratulated. Tang Zheng tenderly looked at her and slightly nodded, "Thank you." Tang Zheng held the sword with one hand, proudly standing, his heart surging with a strong desire and impulse to fight. He really wanted to find someone to fight for 300 rounds, only then would he not disappoint the birth of the peerless sword. This impulse became stronger and stronger, difficult to suppress. His gaze unconsciously fell on Mo Xia. Mo Xia saw a bit of coldness in his eyes from the flames of battle, unconsciously took a step back and cautiously asked, "What do you want to do?" Tang Zheng said with a smile that was not a smile, "You will fight with me." You want me to fight with you? Mo Xia pointed at his nose, feeling incomparably absurd. There was actually someone who took the initiative to ask him, the Yellow Emperor's #1 general, to fight with him. Tang Jing did not pay attention to the shock in Mo Xia's heart and said, "Yes, how about it?" Mo Xia hesitated for a moment, then immediately shook his head like a rattle drum and said, "I will not agree to your powerless request." Yes, this was a provocation to him. If it was before, he would definitely teach the opponent a lesson without hesitation, making the opponent pay the price for his crazy actions. But at this moment, he did not have any such thoughts. His only thought was to not fight with Tang Jing. Not only was he unable to see through Tang Jing's cultivation level, but the hidden mystic sword also made him timid, not daring to act rashly. Tang Jing didn't expect Mo Xia to reject him so bluntly. He asked suspiciously, "Why not?" Mo Xia rolled her eyes at him and said, "I'm not a sparring partner." Tang Jing was neither angry nor anxious. He asked calmly, "Are you sure you don't want to fight me?" "I'm afraid that Tianchanzi won't agree to your request." As soon as the 3 words Tianchanzi came out, Mo Xia's nerves immediately tensed up. Huffing and puffing, she said, "Are you threatening me?" "You can think of it that way." Tang Jing shrugged and did not deny it. Mo Xia was so angry that she almost stomped her feet. Flustered and exasperated, she said, "Didn't you just promise me to persuade Tianchanzi?" "Yes, I will persuade him, but that doesn't mean I won't raise any other opinions," Tang Jing added. That one sentence poked at Mo Xia's weak spot. He panted like an ox and came back to his senses after a while. Gnashing his teeth, he said, "You win." Li Xiaotian looked at the two and couldn't help but laugh. He felt even more proud of his beloved. Not long ago, if Tang Jing had said that, Mo Xia would definitely not have been lenient and would have killed him. Now, he no longer dared to fight with Tang Jing. The earth-shaking changes in this short period of time had already explained everything. Tang Jing was too strong, enough to make Mo Xia fearful. "Then you make your move." Mo Xia took a stance and fiercely glared at Tang Jing. He looked as if he had nothing left to live for. Tang Jing raised the hidden mystic sword up high. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A few slashes were sent out, but they were not aimed at Mo Xia. Instead, the sword light flew to several corners of the room. The sword light disappeared and the atmosphere in the room underwent a subtle change. Mo Xia's pupils suddenly constricted. She looked around and furrowed her brows. She seemed to be deep in thought. Finally, she said meaningfully, "You laid down a formation to protect this secret room?" Tang Jing did not hide his praise. "Smart. You saw through the mystery with a single glance." Now that his power had greatly increased and he had the hidden sword technique, he was able to set up a simple formation with ease. This secret room seemed to have become a paradise. The outside world couldn't detect the situation inside the secret room at all. Li Xiaotian looked left and right. He also saw a bit of mystery, but he did not see it as clearly as Mo Xia. Mo Xia's face was as calm as water. He took a step forward and walked towards Tang Jing. Tang Jing did not move. Like a statue, he stared at Mo Xia as he walked over. With every step Mo Xia took, his aura rose. In just a few steps, his aura soared to the sky. In the end, he was like a sharp sword. He did not have a sword in his hand, but he was a sword. He could cut hair with a single blow. He was incomparably fierce. Tang Jing was still very calm. It was precisely this calmness that gave people a great pressure. He wasn't bluffing, but he was confident in himself. Mo Xia was very clear on this point. Therefore, when he took the last step, his aura had accumulated to the peak. "Kill!" A low roar burst out from the depths of Mo Xia's throat. It was filled with a feeling of endless power. Once the word "kill" came out, an earth-shattering sword chi was emitted from Mo Xia's body. In an instant, it filled this large space. He was like a sharp sword. He suddenly accelerated. One of his hands was like a sword. He chopped down fiercely. His aura was like a rainbow. Sword chi soared to the sky. This was an expert. He used his hand as a sword, but the power of his attack was not inferior to a real sword. Tang Jing finally moved. He lifted the hidden mysterious sword. His speed was very slow, as if he was moving in slow motion. On the contrary, Mo Xia's attack speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Tang Jing. He was deeply afraid that Tang Jing was preparing a big move. Therefore, he took the initiative to attack first. He wanted to give Tang Jing a heavy blow. Seeing the rainbow-like sword chi approaching, Tang Jing casually waved the hidden mysterious sword. This sword's speed was also very slow. It was as if he did not eat his fill. But the moment the hidden mysterious sword chopped down, a mysterious power surged out from the hidden mysterious sword. Its aura could topple mountains and overturn seas. This is sword chi. Mo Xia immediately recognized it. He shouted loudly. The hidden mysterious sword chi was not invisible. It was black. However, if one wanted to distinguish it with the naked eye, they would have to observe carefully. The hidden mysterious sword chi was like a rainbow. The sword chi collided with Mo Xia's sword chi. There was no earth-shattering collision. There was not even a trace of a ripple. Mo Xia's sword chi was like a clay ox entering the sea. It completely disappeared into the hidden mysterious sword chi. Chasm. Mo Xia immediately thought of this word. Other words were not enough to describe the difference between the two. Therefore, he used the word chasm. But Mo Xia did not retreat. There was no way to retreat. Tang Jing did not only need this short exchange. He needed an even more perilous situation. Only then would Tang Jing be able to fully display the power of the hidden mysterious sword. Mo Xia had to do this. Therefore, he used his hand as a sword and rushed towards Tang Jing, who was just inches away. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1439. Seeing Mo Xia charge at him, his raging fighting spirit was almost uncontrollable. It soared into the sky, and his explosive power seemed to break through the horizon. Tang Jing's blood was boiling as the hidden mysterious sword cheered loudly. The sword light spread out in all directions, covering the large space. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two sounds broke through the air. A sword chi and a sword light attacked each other. Bang! In midair, sparks flew in all directions from this confrontation. It was no longer safe and sound, and the wind and waves were calm. Lines flashed on the hidden mysterious sword like secret runes. After flashing, it made people tremble from the bottom of their hearts. Mo Xia's eyes narrowed into slits as he stared at the flashing lines and shouted, "Sacred runes." Sacred runes? Tang Jing frowned. This was the first time he had heard of these two words. He had seen similar lines on other sacred weapons before. Could it be that sacred weapons all had their own lines, so they were called sacred runes? His guess was correct. Sacred weapons had their own unique lines, which was the key to distinguishing them from other magic weapons. Sacred runes were equivalent to human genes, a unique symbol. The complexity of the sacred runes represented the power of the sacred weapon. Sacred runes were not more powerful the more complicated they were. On the contrary, the simpler they were, the more powerful they were. The Great Tao was simple. Turning complexity into simplicity was the most powerful. Therefore, the sacred runes on Tang Jing's sacred weapons were mostly complicated. They looked mysterious, but in reality, they had greatly reduced the quality of the sacred weapon. Tang Jing did not know this, but Mo Xia was not unfamiliar with it. After all, he was a master blacksmith and had seen many sacred weapons. He had also studied sacred runes. Sacred runes were not carved by master blacksmiths themselves, but naturally grew during the refining process. Why was the process like this? Why would sacred weapons be produced? Even Mo Xia himself did not fully understand. But he concluded that sacred runes were the truth of the great Tao being simple. In fact, he had seen many sacred weapons and studied many sacred runes. Originally, he would not be so surprised when he saw sacred runes. He was used to it. After all, the hidden mysterious sword was a sacred weapon. It was normal for it to have sacred runes. However, when he saw the saint inscriptions on the hidden mystic sword, he was still shocked, speechless. Why are the saint inscriptions of the hidden mystic sword so simple? It's ridiculously simple. The saint inscriptions extend from the hilt to the tip without any sense of chaos. Impossible. How is this possible? He had always wanted to refine a magic treasure with simple sacred inscriptions. Wasn't that the sacred inscriptions in front of him right now? However, he had once put in so much effort, but to no avail. He almost didn't dare to think like this. He even believed that it was impossible for a complicated saint inscription to appear, especially one as simple as this. The scene before him gave him a heavy blow and made him understand that he was a frog at the bottom of a well. It wasn't that there were no saint inscriptions in this world, but that he didn't have the ability to refine them. Bang! The moment the sacred inscriptions lit up, the hidden mysterious sword's power increased greatly. It ruthlessly shattered Immerse's sword chi. The sword light was unstoppable and hit Immerse. Although Tang Jing dissipated most of the force, Immerse's mind was in chaos. He was completely distracted and was hit by the sword. Like a kite with a broken string, he ruthlessly crashed into the wall of the secret room. If not for the protection of the formation, the wall would have collapsed. Tang Jing was shocked by the power of the sword. Especially when Immerse's mind was distracted. He saw it clearly and didn't understand why Immerse had such a reaction. Immerse climbed up from the ground. He didn't care about the blood at the corner of his mouth. He stared straight at the sacred inscriptions on the hidden mysterious sword. The hidden mysterious sword's battle intent gradually subsided. The sacred inscriptions flickered a few times and disappeared without a trace. Tang Jing saw Immerse staring at the hidden mysterious sword and guessed that the reason for Immerse's reaction must be on the sword. He went straight to the point and asked, "Immerse, what's wrong with you?" Immerse's gaze moved up and finally met Tang Jing's eyes. He couldn't help but feel jealous of Tang Jing. Why did he have such dog's hit luck to refine such a heaven-defying sacred inscriptions on the divine weapon? Tang Jing looked at Immerse in confusion. He didn't understand the reason for his complicated gaze. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Immerse was silent for a long time. He said in disappointment, "Do you know what's so mysterious about the hidden mysterious sword's sacred inscriptions?" Hearing him mention the sacred inscriptions again and again, Tang Jing's heart trembled. So the strange thing was on the sacred inscriptions. He glanced at the hidden mysterious sword. With a thought, he activated the hidden mysterious sword. The sacred inscriptions faintly appeared again. He pointed at the sacred inscriptions and said, "I don't know what's so mysterious about the sacred inscriptions. Can you tell me?" Immerse muttered to himself. In the end, he revealed the truth and sighed, "It's true that fortune favors fools." After a slight pause, he continued, "You know that sacred weapons all have sacred inscriptions. This is the symbol of the sacred weapon's identity. It's a characteristic that other magic treasures have. But the differences between sacred inscriptions are thousands and thousands of different. The more complex the sacred inscriptions, the lower the quality of the sacred weapon. The simpler the sacred inscriptions, the higher the quality of the sacred weapon." Immerse spoke tirelessly, but it was as if he was enlightened. It made Tang Jing suddenly realize that sacred weapons and sacred inscriptions had such a mysterious connection. There were so many mysteries. He couldn't help but look at his hidden mysterious sword. The sacred inscriptions on it were very simple. It was even a little too simple. It was just a few perfectly straight lines. He recalled the sacred inscriptions he had seen before. Those sacred inscriptions were obviously much more complex. They couldn't be compared to this simple sacred inscriptions. Moreover, if one carefully observed the sacred inscriptions on the hidden mysterious sword, they could clearly feel the beauty hidden within the simplicity. The simpler the sacred inscriptions were, the more relaxed and happy it made people feel. With a single glance, they would be deeply captivated. Did you see through the mysteries? Mo Xia asked curiously when he saw him staring at the sacred inscriptions. Tang Jing nodded thoughtfully. I saw through a little bit. If it weren't for Mo Xia's reminder or seeing such a simple sacred inscriptions, he definitely wouldn't have noticed the mysteries within the sacred inscriptions. Even Tian Chanzi had never mentioned anything about sacred inscriptions before. In fact, this wasn't hard to understand. Although Tian Chanzi's strength was extraordinary, compared to Mo Xia, an expert from ancient times, especially a master artificer, the gap was like a natural chasm. The number of sacred weapons Tian Chanzi had seen could be counted on one hand. But Mo Xia had seen too many sacred weapons. Moreover, he had personally refined a sacred weapon. It could be imagined how detailed and profound his understanding of sacred weapons was. Hearing Tang Jing say that he saw through a little bit, Mo Xia couldn't help but sigh. This person's intelligence was extraordinary. It was no wonder he had such achievements today. The few great figures from ancient times were just like him when they were young. Suddenly, he had a feeling that perhaps Tang Jing was far more powerful than he had imagined. Moreover, he would go even further. He had always treated him as an enemy, but it might not have been the right thing to do. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1440. What? Tang Jing was shocked. He thought he heard wrong. Mo Xia actually wanted to borrow the hidden mysterious sword to study for a few days. He stared at Mo Xia, seeing his serious face. He was sure he was not joking. He could not help but ask, is the hidden mysterious sword really that important? Mo Xia nodded his head. He is far more important than you think, much more powerful. Chapter 1441. Mo Xia had returned to Summer Heavens, but Tang Jing would not let him take the hidden mysterious sword and leave his territory. Mo Xia did not care, since all his thoughts were on the hidden mysterious sword. He was eager to try, impatient to explore the secrets of the hidden mysterious sword. Li Xiaotian looked at the Summer Heavens on Tang Jing's wrist and said with a heavy heart, Dizang of Goguryo's dark side turning into a weapon spirit, will there be any repercussions? Tang Jing understood her worries. After all, both of them had seen the strength of Dizang of Goguryo's dark side. If the other side had some unfathomable method and left the hidden mysterious sword, then Tang Jing would not be able to stay out of this and might even suffer a backlash. He muttered to himself for a while and said decisively, Dizang of Goguryo's dark side is frightening, but until now I have not found any bad clues. Even if he does turn against me in the future, by that time my strength will have increased by leaps and bounds and I will have the strength to deal with him. Seeing him in high spirits and full of confidence, Li Xiaotian's eyes were filled with splendor, the corners of her mouth raised into a charming smile. I believe in you. Tang Jing's women had witnessed his growth, his strength, and his success time and time again, so naturally they chose to believe in him. Even if his self-confidence was inflated, or even arrogant, they would still choose to believe in him. Tang Jing was not worried about Dizang of Goguryo's dark side, but instead his eyes fell on the 9 revolving pill furnace. There were a few more saint inscriptions on the pill furnace, but he couldn't sense the existence of the artifact spirit. He had to find the artifact spirit from the soul essences on the pill furnace's walls. This wasn't an easy task, and even Mo Xia didn't have an effective method. This was confirmed by the information in the jade pendant. Mo Xia was indeed not lying. Li Xiaotian saw his reaction and guessed his thoughts, but she had no way to help him, so she encouraged him, don't worry, there will be a way. Tang Jing smiled brightly. He took a deep breath and said, yes, there will definitely be a way. We don't need to rush. Wait until I find the artifact spirit of the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. At that time, saint artifacts will no longer be out of reach. I will be able to refine saint artifacts myself. Everyone will also be able to possess saint artifacts and increase their strength. Li Xiaotian nodded heavily. That day won't be too far away. The two of them left the secret room. The others were looking forward to seeing Tang Zheng's empty hands. Their hearts couldn't help but tighten. Yi Dingdang asked impatiently, "How was it? Did you succeed? What do you think?" Tang Zheng asked mischievously. With a whoosh, Yi Dingdang arrived in front of him and urged, "Hurry up and tell me. What's the result?" Tang Zheng smiled and glanced at the others. Everyone had the same reaction. Their gazes were burning. They all knew that Tang Zheng was wholeheartedly refining the 9 Serenity's mysterious iron. This was a very high-risk task and there was no guarantee of success. "Alright, I won't keep you in suspense." Tang Zheng clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention. "I will announce the answer. I have already refined the 9 Serenity's mysterious iron into a sword." "You succeeded?" Yi Dingdang asked. The others were also nervous. They were very concerned about the answer to this question. Tang Zheng slowly nodded and said in a clear voice, "Of course it was a success." "Wow!" Yi Dingdang immediately cheered. She jumped high into the air and landed in Tang Zheng's arms. She tightly hugged him and happily said, "Then quickly take out the sword and let us see." Tang Zheng spread out his hands and said, "I don't have it." "How could you not have it?" Fang Shishir also cried out in alarm. "Don't be nervous." Tang Zheng saw this and blurted out, "The divine sword has indeed been successfully refined. However, I am currently loaning it to Mo Xia. In 3 days, he will return it to me." Hearing this, everyone was even more confused. How did this have anything to do with Mo Xia? "You said divine sword. What grade did you refine?" Tian Chanzi immediately grasped the main point and hurriedly asked. "A sacred tool." Tang Zheng lightly said. "What?" Tian Chanzi was shocked. "You actually refined a sacred tool?" The others were shocked at first. Then they were overjoyed. A sacred tool was a supreme treasure that could only be encountered by chance. Tang Zheng was actually able to refine a treasure of this level. Wasn't this a great thing? If everyone had a sacred tool in the future, how spectacular would that be? Who would be their opponent? Just the thought of it was enough to make one's blood boil and blood boil. Tang Zheng could understand Tian Chanzi's thoughts. After all, a sacred tool was an absolute temptation to any cultivator. Hearing that Tang Zheng was actually able to refine a sacred tool on his own was truly shocking. "How did you do it?" Tian Chanzi couldn't suppress the mixed feelings in his heart and asked. "Actually, this is not just my work alone," Tang Zheng pointed at Li Xiaotian. "She also contributed, and Mo Xia's help." Tang Zheng spoke tirelessly. Everyone was shocked as they listened. All of their attention was attracted. Hearing the thrilling and exciting parts of the story, they felt as if they had experienced it themselves. Their hearts were also suspended in midair. When Tang Zheng finished speaking, many people's hearts still hadn't calmed down. They looked at Tang Zheng in bewilderment. Tian Chanzi suddenly understood. No wonder Mo Xia was related to this matter. He actually played such a big role. The title of Master Refiner was indeed well-deserved. He was much more powerful than himself, who was an unorthodox person. He knew that with his own strength, there was no way he could do this. He was gratified and looked at Tang Zheng with mixed feelings. He said, "You are really smart. If you had used your own strength to refine it, whether or not you would have succeeded is still unknown." Tang Zheng knew that this sentence wasn't wrong. He nodded and said, "This is all thanks to Li Xiaotian. If not for her reminder, I would have almost overlooked this point." Yi Dingdang, Fang Shishir, and the others looked at Li Xiaotian with complicated expressions. She had actually helped Tang Zheng so much. It really gave them a feeling of catching up from behind. This made them feel a sense of urgency. They couldn't not work hard. The few women secretly clenched their teeth and tensed their nerves, mustering all their strength. Li Xiaotian saw that several pairs of eyes were like lasers, uniformly shooting towards her. Her heart moved and she immediately understood what was going on. But she was calm and composed, as if nothing had happened. She didn't feel the slightest bit of complacency. She knew that the gains and losses of this city and pool were not worth mentioning. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi didn't pay attention to the open and covert struggle between the few women. The two of them coincidentally put their attention on the things they had obtained from Immerse. Tang Zheng didn't hide anything and shared it with Tian Chanzi. Tian Chanzi was very excited and didn't want to miss any details. It seemed that he wanted to talk to Tang Zheng for 3 days and 3 nights. In fact, the actual situation was similar. For the next 3 days, Tian Chanzi and Tang Zheng sat and discussed, analyzing and studying the things that Immerse had given them. The two of them benefited a lot. It turned out that the path of refining had so many things. It was an eye-opener. The two's ability to refine weapons improved by leaps and bounds. They were eager to try it out and couldn't wait to test it out. But an important piece of news came from the Li Palace. The Li Palace had always been inquiring about the Empyrean fairy, but unexpectedly discovered the whereabouts of another person, Yan Qingyi, or in other words, the whereabouts of the Emperor of Heaven. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1442. Yan Qingyi's whereabouts had actually been discovered by the Li Palace. This was truly shocking news. Tang Zheng was shocked and immediately made the decision to go see Yan Qingyi. Yan Qingyi had disappeared for so long, it was definitely not for no reason. Now that she had appeared again, it could not be ruled out that there was another deeper meaning. In addition, Qiyu had always wanted to use the Empyrean fairy to bait the Emperor of Heaven, this big fish. What if the Emperor of Heaven fell for it? Therefore, no matter what, Tang Zheng could not sit idly by. He had to think of a way to see Yan Qingyi. Li Xiaotian was very clear about Tang Zheng's thoughts. He said considerately, "The preparations have been completed. We can leave at any time." Tang Zheng nodded heavily and praised, "Good, then wait for me for a moment." His spiritual sense entered Sumer world. Immerse was concentrating on studying the hidden profound sword. Seeing him like a meditating monk, Tang Zheng lightly coughed and interrupted Immerse. 3 days have passed. Immerse suddenly raised his head and asked in disbelief, "How is it so fast?" Time passed, but he did not feel it at all. His entire body and mind were immersed in the hidden profound sword, trying to explore its mysteries. Tang Zheng lightly said, "You're too engrossed. I wonder what you've gained?" "Of course I've gained something." Immerse's face immediately brimmed with radiance, but he immediately restrained it, as if he was deeply afraid that Tang Zheng was prying into the mysteries he had comprehended. Tang Zheng looked deeply at him, but did not pursue the matter. He was not surprised that Immerse had gained something from studying the hidden profound sword. Because, with Immerse's intelligence and rich experience, this was an inevitable result. He was also not jealous. He did not even want to have any ideas about Immerse's research results. He believed that once he studied the hidden profound sword, he would definitely gain something as well. He did not need to rely on Immerse. Immerse nervously looked at Tang Zheng, deeply afraid that he would want to take away the thing he had studied with great difficulty. But seeing that he was calm and composed, and did not seem to pursue the matter further, he let out a sigh of relief. He reluctantly looked at the hidden mysterious sword and said, "You want to take it back?" "Of course." Tang Zheng nodded. Immerse really wanted to ask Tang Zheng to lend it to her for a few more days, but her pride won over her desire. If she did that, wouldn't she be slapping herself in the face? Previously, he had boasted that within 3 days, he would be able to thoroughly study the mysteries of the hidden mystic sword. Now that he wanted to keep the hidden profound sword, wouldn't that mean that he hadn't studied the hidden profound sword thoroughly within 3 days? He would never do such a thing. He took a deep breath and resisted the urge to keep the hidden sword. He pretended to be generous and said, "Take it back." Tang Zheng took the Xuanzang sword. The moment the sword landed in his palm, the Xuanzang sword immediately let out a high-pitched sword hum, as if it was cheering for returning to its owner's hand. Mo Xia's expression changed slightly as he let out a long sigh. How he wished that he had such a godly sword. Wait a minute. Seeing that Tang Zheng was about to leave, Mo Xia hurriedly called out to him, "You promised me to persuade Tian Chanzi. What happened?" Tang Zheng stopped and looked at Mo Xia, saying, "I tried to persuade him, but he still hasn't agreed." Mo Xia's pupils shrunk as he stared at Tang Zheng, as if trying to discern whether his words were true or false. Tang Zheng calmly looked at him. It was as he said, he tried to persuade Tian Chanzi, but Tian Chanzi was stubborn and did not compromise. He was not willing to let Mo Xia examine his body to see if there was still the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor. After a long while, Mo Xia's interest waned as he lowered his head. He faintly sighed and said, "All right, then I will continue to wait for your news. I hope that he will agree soon." Mo Xia really did not see any flaws. Moreover, he was the one asking for help, so he did not dare to act rashly. Looking at his lonely expression, Tang Jing said, "Don't worry, there will be a day when he will agree. I will do my best to persuade him." These words were not all lies. Tang Jing would continue to persuade Tian Chanzi, because if there really was the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor in his body, then it would be like a ticking time bomb that could explode at any time. Whether or not Tian Chanzi could resist the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor again was unknown. Therefore, letting Tian Chanzi examine his body was not necessarily a bad thing. At least, it could first ensure Tian Chanzi's safety. After Tang Jing finished speaking, he did not pursue the matter any further. With a thought, he left Sumi World. Tian Chanzi was immediately attracted by the hidden mysterious sword that suddenly appeared in his hand. These days, he had heard too much about the various magical aspects of the hidden mysterious sword. Now that he finally saw its true appearance, he almost could not suppress his excitement, and his face flushed red. Tang Jing glanced at him and handed the hidden mysterious sword to him. Tian Chanzi was suddenly startled, and immediately his eyes bloomed with a blazing gaze. He rubbed his hands hard, as if he wanted to make his hands cleaner so that they could be worthy of the hidden mysterious sword. He was no stranger to sacred weapons, but for such a high-quality sacred weapon, he had rarely seen it in his life. He had already heard Tang Jing mention about sacred inscriptions. He also knew that the sacred inscriptions of the hidden mysterious sword were extraordinary, and that even Mo Xia wanted to study them. He carefully received the hidden mysterious sword as if he was receiving a sacred object. His gaze was firmly attracted, and he was unwilling to move away. "Don't be so nervous, there's no need to be so exaggerated." Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. He rarely saw Tian Chanzi like this, and could not help but look at him with interest. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and said, "What do you brat know? This is an extraordinary sacred weapon. It is equivalent to a sacred object. How can I not be in awe and be careful?" Tang Zheng helplessly rolled his eyes, and gave up in his heart. He helplessly said, "All right, you study it carefully." Tian Chanzi had an expression of course I will study it. His finger brushed across the blade, but he was not the owner of the hidden mysterious sword. When his finger brushed across the blade, there was not the slightest difference. Tian Chanzi's expression turned cold. He urged his power, and a stream of qi flew out from his fingertips. Pooh! The qi was like an electric current, hitting the hidden mysterious sword. Shwa! The sword light soared into the sky, covering the sky and covering the earth. It was incomparably fierce, and spread in all directions. Tian Chanzi was the first to bear the brunt, and immediately suffered. Hiss! He sucked in a breath of cold air. Before he could retreat, he was hit by the sword light. One must know that he was a person who practiced the outer sky flying immortal sword technique. He was well versed in the way of the sword, but when he saw this sword light, he still felt a sense of fear. He hurriedly retreated, and loosened his fingers. The hidden mysterious sword fell from his palm, but it did not fall to the ground. Instead, it lightly floated in the air. The hidden mysterious sword's light was like a dazzling sun, attracting everyone's attention. This is really different. Tian Chanzi's heart still had a lingering fear. He was still in a state of shock, and resentfully withdrew his hand. Tang Zheng waved his hand, and the hidden mysterious sword cheered. With a whoosh, it flew back into his hand. The sword light was restrained, and it looked ordinary. But no one dared to underestimate the hidden mysterious sword. It revealed a little of its edge, and it had such power. It was really amazing. Tang Zheng's gaze fell on Li Xiaotian, and said, "Let's go find Yan Qingyi." Although the other women wanted to refuse, the Li Palace was under the control of Li Xiaotian. She was the only one who knew the situation best. No matter what, the people accompanying them could not exclude her. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1443. On the somersault cloud, Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian stood side by side with Xiao Bai beside them. Although there were many objections from the family, the two still traveled together in the end. Of course, Xiao Bai was missing as well. Xiao Bai had already become a pillar of support and was indispensable. Li Xiaotian pointed out the direction, and the somersault cloud whizzed away like a jet plane skimming across the blue sky. Because the Tree of Life had improved the environment of this world, there was no longer any hazy weather. The blue sky and white clouds made people feel relaxed and happy as they experienced the beauty of nature. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew from the front. It was ridiculously strong and caused the somersault cloud to sway a few times before immediately stabilizing. Li Xiaotian stared ahead with a burning gaze and said, "There's a situation up ahead." Tang Zheng nodded slightly. He had already seen through it. His heart stirred as he asked, "How far are we from Yan Qingyi?" "Not far." Tang Zheng secretly nodded his head, deep in thought. Suddenly, a beam of light descended from the sky. The two of them were shocked and hurriedly looked up. "What is that?" Li Xiaotian pointed at the sky and asked. Tang Zheng's attention was also attracted by the sky. A beam of light descended from the sky and a crack appeared in the sky. The crack was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. Tang Zheng was shocked and cried out, "Spatial gate." "What, spatial gate?" Li Xiaotian was shocked. She was all too clear about the power of spatial gates. Suddenly seeing the spatial gate, Li Xiaotian was shocked out of her wits and hurriedly asked, "Who opened the spatial gate?" Tang Zheng had some understanding of the spatial laws and naturally wanted to find out who in this world had such great ability to actually open a spatial gate. Which world does this spatial door lead to? Will there be enemies coming out from it? Li Xiaotian asked again, trembling with fear. Tang Zheng's head started throbbing. This was one of his biggest worries. He was most worried that a powerful enemy would come out of the spatial door. That would definitely be a huge disaster for this world. Xiao Bai stared at the spatial gate without blinking. After a while, he said, "This is the spatial gate that leads to the realm beyond heaven." "What? Enter the outer sky?" Tang Zheng exclaimed, his voice rising several octaves. Xiao Bai nodded. "I sense the aura of the outer sky from the spatial gate." Tang Zheng immediately remembered that the last time he and Xiao Bai's spiritual awareness crossed the sky beyond sky, they must have alerted the other side. If they followed the tracks and crossed through this space door, it would definitely be a disaster. Tang Zheng could no longer sit still. He activated the somersault cloud and rushed forward. The person who opened the spatial door must be in front of him. As expected, a figure leaped into his eyes. His pupils shrank, and he immediately locked onto his target. Yan Qingyi. At almost the same time, he and Li Xiaotian called out at the same time. It was actually Yan Qingyi who opened the spatial door. Tang Zheng had obtained the spatial law mystique from the Dragon Slayer. But where did Yan Qingyi comprehend the spatial law from? Could it be because of the Emperor of Heaven? Tang Zheng was puzzled. He walked in front of Yan Qingyi and shouted, "Stop! Do you know what you're doing?" Yan Qingyi raised her eyes and looked at him indifferently. There was no fluctuation in her eyes. She said, "Why should I stop?" You're destroying this world. Do you know that? Tang Zheng said earnestly. Destroying? Yan Qingyi looked up at the sky and stared at the spatial door. She said, it's precisely because I predicted the end of the world. That's why I'm using this method to save this world. Tang Zheng's head moved. He said, didn't you say that the prediction of the end of the world wasn't accurate? That was in the past. Now, I can tell you with certainty that the end of the world will really happen. Yan Qingyi said without stopping until she shocked him to death. Tang Zheng turned pale with fright and subconsciously asked, then who caused the end of the world? Yan Qingyi looked at him deeply and said, far at the horizon, but close at hand. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and pointed at his nose. You're talking about me? Yan Qingyi did not answer, which could be considered as a tacit admission. Tang Zheng's expression changed again and again. He took a deep breath and suppressed the restless emotions in his heart. He asked, didn't you say that I'm the savior of the world? That was in the past. Now, you're not. You've become the source of the world's destruction. Yan Qingyi said without a trace of emotion. Even with Tang Zheng's thick nerves, he could not accept this reality. He had always wanted to save this world and had already put in a lot of effort and paid a lot of price. How could he become the source of the world's destruction? This did not make sense. He did not want to be the savior of the world, but he also did not want to be the chief culprit of the world's destruction. You're talking nonsense. Li Xiaotian heard this and finally could not help but blurt out a retort. Xiao Bai also retorted, yes, she's talking nonsense. We don't need to pay attention to her. Tang Zheng stared at Yan Qingyi with a burning gaze, as if he wanted to discern the truth of her words. However, after looking at her for a while, he was certain that Yan Qingyi was not lying. At least based on his understanding of her, she was not lying. Moreover, with the relationship between the two of them, there was no need for her to lie. But how could this be true? The only explanation was that her prophecy was not accurate. Yes, it must be like this. Tang Zheng silently gave the answer and said, Yan Qingyi, what is your basis? A prophecy with just a few words will not be able to convince me. This is the will of the heavens. Whether or not I can convince you is not important. Yan Qingyi said lightly. Then what are you going to do? Tang Zheng asked in a deep voice. Yan Qingyi looked at Tang Zheng with a deep gaze and said word by word, you and I can be considered to have met by chance, so naturally I won't kill you. Although this is the best way. Kill him? Li Xiaotian snorted disdainfully, hee, you really know how to talk big. Don't think that just because you know how to act mysterious, you can kill whoever you want. Li Xiaotian only had eyes for Tang Zheng. After hearing Yan Qingyi's words, the anger in her heart was ignited, like a volcano that was about to erupt. Yan Qingyi could hear her emotions, but did not care and said, whether or not I can kill him is not up to you to decide. Moreover, I don't need to prove this to you. This tone seemed to be saying that if she wanted to kill Tang Zheng, it would be as easy as turning over her hand. It was not difficult at all. This made Tang Zheng's head bulge. Yan Qingyi was not someone who would talk big. Could it be that she had some kind of fortuitous encounter? Then you'll have to get past me first. Li Xiaotian stepped forward and said resolutely. Yan Qingyi's gaze once again turned to the spatial door and said, killing you is useless. I want to open the spatial door and let all of this come to an end. I want to dissolve all of the karma and prevent the destruction of this world. Happy National Day, there is a second chapter. To read a novel without mistakes, please visit Chapter 1444. Hearing Yan Qingyi's boast, not only was Tang Zheng shocked, but the other two were also shocked. They didn't understand how she could resolve this so-called world-ending crisis. Seeing her attention on the spatial gate, Tang Zheng's head moved and he asked thoughtfully, do you want to use the spatial gate to resolve this so-called world-ending crisis? Yan Qingyi didn't even turn her head and said without blinking, of course, if the sky beyond heaven is completely destroyed, then the world-ending crisis will naturally disappear. Destroy the sky beyond heaven? Tang Zheng was shocked. Yes, the sky beyond heaven is the source of the world's destruction. Destroy it and this world will naturally be safe. Yan Qingyi said without any ripples. Tang Zheng was confused and asked curiously, didn't you say I was the source of the world's destruction? It was you who led the people of the sky beyond heaven to this world, causing the world's destruction. Yan Qingyi said. As soon as this was said, Tang Zheng's heart thumped. He and Xiao Bai looked at each other and thought of the disturbance caused by the last time their divine sense crossed over to the sky beyond heaven. In addition, they also planned to cross over with their physical bodies. In this way, he really could attract the people of the sky beyond heaven to this world. Should they stop the idea of crossing over to the sky beyond heaven again? Tang Zheng was confused. His eyes were filled with worry and he didn't know what to do. Xiao Bai's eyes narrowed and said, Master, don't listen to her nonsense. Moreover, she wants to rely on her own strength to destroy the sky beyond heaven. She really overestimates herself. Now that she has opened the spatial gate, this will really attract the people of the sky beyond heaven to this world. Maybe she is the real culprit of the world's destruction. Li Xiaotian's eyes lit up. He obviously agreed with this statement. Xiao Bai understood the situation of the sky beyond heaven, so his words were reasonable and credible. Tang Zheng, don't let your imagination run wild. Xiao Bai's words are reasonable. Li Xiaotian advised earnestly, afraid that Tang Zheng would be confused by Yan Qingyi's words. Yan Qingyi coldly looked at Xiao Bai and snorted, I will destroy this world. What a joke. I am saving this world, you are the sinners of this world. Sinner, sinner, Tang Zheng heard this and couldn't help muttering, as if possessed. Suddenly, he raised his head, his eyes shining brightly as he stared at Yan Qingyi, saying, I don't know if I'm a sinner, but I do know one thing, and that is that by opening the spatial door right now, you're putting this world in danger. I definitely won't just sit by and watch. Yan Qingyi's eyes flashed and said, You want to go against me? I have always had a good relationship with the Yan family. Moreover, we used to be very close. I don't know how you became like this, but if you really think so, then you are going against me. Tang Zheng said through gritted teeth. Seeing that Tang Zheng was finally resisting, Li Xiaotian and Xiao Bai both let out a sigh of relief. They were previously afraid that Tang Zheng would be bewitched by Yan Qingyi, but it seemed that their worries were unnecessary. If you want to go against me, then go against me. Who's afraid of who? Li Xiaotian said fearlessly. Excellent, Yan Qingyi praised. Then don't blame me for being merciless and ignoring our past relationship. Xiao Bai flew into a rage and attacked Yan Qingyi with a whoosh. He slapped out with his palm and a ball of flames gushed out. The raging flames seemed to burn a hole in the sky. The raging flames flew straight towards Yan Qingyi. Boom! A loud sound rang out, but Yan Qingyi did not move. The place where she stood seemed to have become a vacuum, forming a huge sphere. The flames collided with the sphere, flowing with brilliant colors, but it could not attack Yan Qingyi at all. The others were shocked by this scene. It was inconceivable. One had to know that Xiao Bai's attack contained boundless anger, but it was so casually blocked by her. Just how terrifying was her strength? Tang Zheng also realized this point. She understood Yan Qingyi relatively well in the past, but ever since she returned from the heavenly gate, everything about her changed. She could no longer be judged by common sense. Xiao Bai's attack did not succeed, and he became even more furious. He waved his hand, and a long flame spread out from his palm, finally condensing into a large saber. The large saber was burning with raging flames, and it rippled with blazing air waves. Whoosh! There was a loud sound, and the air waves parted to both sides. Wherever the flaming saber passed, the air crackled. Boom! Another loud sound rang out, and this time, the invisible sphere finally could not withstand it. With a crack, it broke into pieces. The flaming saber continued to slash towards Yan Qingyi with irresistible force. Huh! A strange look appeared in Yan Qingyi's eyes, as if she did not expect Xiao Bai's attack to be so fierce that it actually broke through her defense. At this point, she did not have time to think, and raised one hand. The flaming saber stopped, firmly held between her two fingers, and did not move an inch. The flames kept moving like small fire snakes, but there was no way for it to climb up her arm. An invisible force blocked all of this. Xiao Bai's expression suddenly changed. He was very clear about the power of his flames, but there was no way for them to climb up Yan Qingyi's body. This was enough to explain a lot of problems. Yan Qingyi was indeed terrifyingly powerful. However, he didn't retreat. With a thought, the flame saber transformed into a giant flame python. It wrapped around Yan Qingyi, tightly wrapping around her. Not even a drop of water could escape. Her figure disappeared within the python. The raging flames sealed off all directions, and Yan Qingyi did not have a chance to escape. Xiao Bai's eyes revealed a pleased look, as if he thought that this move would definitely make Yan Qingyi obediently submit. Tang Zheng raised his head to look at the sky. The spatial door was still in its original state, and had not shrunk, let alone disappeared. His heart trembled. This meant that Yan Qingyi was still controlling the spatial door, which also meant that she was not injured. He hurriedly shouted, "Xiao Bai, be careful." Xiao Bai revealed a suspicious look, not understanding what Tang Zheng meant. Bang! Suddenly, there was an earth-shattering explosion. The air waves spread in all directions, and the edges of the somersault cloud shook a few times. The giant flaming python exploded into pieces, turning into many balls of flames that shot in all directions. Xiao Bai was also sent flying backward. He finally understood what Tang Zheng meant by being careful. He was happy too early. His attack did not really defeat Yan Qingyi, and the so-called upper hand was just an illusion. Tang Zheng dodged and caught Xiao Bai. He held his wrist and checked, and only then was he relieved that there was no serious injury. The two of them landed on the somersault cloud, and Li Xiaotian hurriedly asked with concern, "How is Xiao Bai?" Tang Zheng calmly shook his head and said, "He's fine." "What do we do?" Li Xiaotian hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he asked. At the same time, she felt extremely guilty. If the Li Palace's intelligence had been more accurate, they would not have encountered such a situation, and perhaps everything would have changed. Yan Qingyi's strength had far exceeded her expectations. She simply could not guess what would happen next. Chapter 1445. Yan Qingyi looked at the approaching Tang Zheng step by step, and finally turned around to face him, saying, "If you stop me, then the one who will suffer will be you." Tang Zheng smiled but did not say anything, and asked back, "Is that so?" Before he finished speaking, he took a big step forward, and his aura surged. Shwa! The sword light flashed, and the hidden profound sword was already firmly grasped in his hand. The hidden profound sword fell from the sky, and slashed towards Yan Qingyi, like a hot knife through butter. Yan Qingyi once again stretched out a hand, just like when she was dealing with Xiao Bai. Pooh! A streak of blood flew out from her palm. The hidden profound sword had injured her. Her eyes widened in shock, and she hurriedly retreated, unable to hide the shock on her face. What sword is this? She did not care about the bleeding wound, and her gaze locked onto the hidden profound sword. With her knowledge and experience, she had never seen such a frightening treasure. Hidden profound sword. Tang Zheng said without hesitation. Yan Qingyi softly repeated, "Hidden profound sword?" Obviously, she had never heard of this name before, and curiously asked, "Where did it come from?" "I made it myself." Tang Zheng did not hide it. "You made it?" Yan Qingyi's expression changed. She was very clear on how powerful a treasure of this level could be, and this actually came from Tang Zheng's hands. How could he have such a powerful ability? Tang Zheng did not want to dwell on this question, and pointed the sword at Yan Qingyi, saying, "Close the spatial door, and everything can be discussed." "Impossible," Yan Qingyi said resolutely and decisively. Then don't blame me for being impolite. Tang Zheng leapt forward, and the hidden profound sword fiercely slashed towards Yan Qingyi. He did not have the slightest intention of underestimating her, and focused 120% of his attention. Where the sword pointed, a huge crack appeared in the air. Yan Qingyi's hands crossed, and a huge hand appeared in the air, 5 fingers closed, and firmly grasped the hidden profound sword. Pung! Sparks flew everywhere from the hidden mystic sword as it clashed with the giant hand. Tang Zheng was shocked. There was no difference between him and Xiao Bai. The only advantage he had was the hidden sword. Therefore, this caught Yan Qingyi off guard and greatly exceeded her expectations. Puff! The hidden mystic sword pierced through the giant hand, and the giant hand immediately disintegrated into nothingness. However, before Tang Zheng could let out a sigh of relief, another giant hand appeared out of thin air. It descended from the sky and suppressed the hidden sword. This time, the hidden mystic sword did not pierce through the giant hand. The 5 fingers of the giant hand were spread open like a huge mountain, towering and majestic with the might of the heavens. Tang Zheng immediately felt a strong pressure on his shoulders, as if there really was a towering mountain falling from the sky. This kind of pressure made it hard to breathe, and even their heartstrings trembled. Let's see if you can escape from my 5-finger mountain. Yan Qingyi's thunderous voice rumbled into Tang Zheng's ears. 5-finger mountain? Tang Zheng's head trembled. He stared straight at the giant hand descending from the sky, as if it really was the 5-finger mountain. If he was really suppressed by the 5-finger mountain, then he would not be able to turn the tables for the rest of his life. He took a deep breath, and his chi sank into his dantian. He shouted himself hoarse, and his voice soared into the sky. He roared, "Break!" Puff! The 5-finger mountain was pierced through, forming a huge hole. Tang Zheng broke free from the 5-finger mountain and flew into the sky. He no longer cared about Yan Qingyi, and went straight for the spatial door. Because the attack just now caused the spatial door to tremble. It was obvious that Yan Qingyi had to be distracted to deal with Tang Zheng. The spatial door would involve most of the body and mind, and when Yan Qingyi could not focus on protecting the spatial door, it would face collapse. Tang Zheng was well versed in the laws of space, so he was very clear about this point. He also very keenly discovered this flaw. He did not care about his own safety, and directly rushed to the spatial door. The pitch-black spatial door seemed to have a huge temptation, luring him to step into it. He took a deep breath, and restrained the huge temptation. With a thought, he urged the laws of space, and pushed his hand forward, exerting a mysterious force on the spatial door. Immediately, the spatial door trembled violently, as if it was about to collapse. If it were not for Yan Qingyi's distraction, and not focusing on protecting the spatial door, causing the spatial door to tremble, Tang Zheng would not have been able to seize the opportunity to use the laws of space to destroy the spatial door. Once a spatial door successfully appeared, and under the wholehearted support of its owner, it was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to destroy the spatial door. Tang Zheng understood this point. Moreover, Yan Qingyi's strength was extraordinary, and the stability of the spatial door she created was especially unusual. He had no choice but to look for a flaw, and then take advantage of the situation to completely destroy the other party's plan. Yan Qingyi saw the changes in the spatial door, and her mind was greatly shaken. Her expression changed greatly, and she had a look of disbelief. If Tang Zheng's battle prowess had increased, and even refined a divine weapon like the hidden profound sword, she might have been surprised, but she definitely would not be as surprised as she was now. Not only was she surprised, she was even shocked. She was well versed in the laws of space, and understood how difficult it was to comprehend the laws of space. She had comprehended them from the heavenly Tao, and it was equivalent to the heavenly Tao imparting them to her. According to the heavenly Tao, the laws of space were one of the ultimate mysteries. Very few people knew about it, and even fewer people could master the laws of space. Yan Qingyi thought that perhaps she was the only one in the world who knew the laws of space. Even if she was not the only one, the others definitely did not include Tang Zheng. But the scene in front of her gave her a vivid lesson, letting her see the true reality. She was not the only one who knew the laws of space, and Tang Zheng was one of them. Moreover, he could use this flaw to destroy her spatial door. Stop! Yan Qingyi shouted, just like how Tang Zheng and the others tried to stop her, but it was pale and powerless, to no avail. Yan Qingyi hurriedly tried to salvage the situation, trying to stabilize the spatial door. Tang Zheng immediately saw through her attempt, and with an irresistible force, he once again used the laws of space, disintegrating the last trace of the spatial door's power. Rumble. With a loud bang, the spatial door was destroyed in mid-air, and brilliant lights filled the sky, dazzling everyone. Yan Qingyi's face immediately turned as white as paper, watching this scene in disbelief. She never dreamed that her plan would be so easily interrupted. The spatial door was not something that could be opened casually. She had not comprehended much of the laws of space, and with her current strength, she could only open the spatial door once. Now that the spatial door was destroyed, she had no way to open it again in a short period of time. This was the reason why she was so heartbroken. Her eyes burned with anger as she glared fiercely at Tang Zheng. Although there was a distance between them, it was as if she wanted to burn him to ashes. Tang Zheng, you ruined my plans, so don't blame me for being merciless. She hysterically roared as if she had gone mad. Translator, Transin editor, Transin. Chapter 1446. Yan Qingyi was hysterical. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed color. The sky was dark, as if the sky was about to fall. A huge hand was faintly discernible in the clouds. It was incomparably huge, as if there was only one hand left in the vast sky. Whoosh! The wind blew, and the huge hand came down from the sky. Bang! The ground collapsed. Gravel flew all over the sky. Smoke and dust rose into the sky. A huge handprint appeared on the ground. Although the huge hand had not arrived, the power had already passed through the air. Layer after layer, fiercely transmitted over. Tang Zheng's breathing suddenly stopped. He was almost unable to breathe because of the power. The somersault cloud floating in the air was also affected. It swayed and quickly fell down. Bang! The somersault cloud landed on the ground. The clouds trembled. Li Xiaotian and Xiao Bai, who were standing on top of it, almost fell down. The two suddenly raised their heads and stared at Tang Zheng, who was floating in the air. He was the first to bear the brunt. The impact was definitely greater. However, he resisted with difficulty. He raised the hidden mysterious sword. His expression was unyielding. He was like a stubborn bone. He would definitely not yield to pressure. Even if it was the might of the heavens. Tai Chi dual sword technique. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion came out of his mouth. It was earth-shattering. The hidden mysterious sword shone brightly. He had lost the battle spirit for too long. It had been a long time since he used this sword technique. But as his cultivation increased, the Tai Chi dual sword technique had already advanced by leaps and bounds. It had reached a terrifying level. The hidden mysterious sword's light was like a blazing sun. It lit up the entire sky. Even the dark sky was illuminated with a dazzling light. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Rays of sword light flew out from the hidden mysterious sword. In an instant, it was like thousands of small swords. They surrounded the hidden mysterious sword and danced. From afar, it was as if the hidden mysterious sword had grown from small to large. It became a huge sword. From Tang Zheng's hand, it extended to the horizon. It stood between the heaven and earth. It was majestic and gave people a strong sense of oppression. When Yan Qingyi saw this sword, her eyes could not help but narrow into slits. She could feel the power of this sword. But she did not retreat. Her hand pressed down. Under the five-finger mountain, it was as if everything was going to be crushed into powder. The hard rocks on the ground cracked inch by inch and turned into fine powder. The air seemed to have been compressed as well, producing a series of muffled sounds, unable to bear this shocking pressure. Tang Zheng was still standing straight, his spine was not bent in the slightest, and the hidden mysterious sword was also as straight as a blade. "Break!" Tang Zheng shouted. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The tens of thousands of swordlights surrounding the hidden profound sword flew out in unison, soaring into the sky, rushing towards the five-finger mountain in the clouds. Whoosh! 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 Whoosh whoosh! 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 Whoosh whoosh! On the contrary, this seemed to have ignited Yan Qingyi's fury. The speed of the palm's descent increased greatly, and a loud whistling sound rang out. The only thing left in the world was this sharp whistling sound. As far as the naked eye could see, the sky became even darker, and a dark mass descended. A fear that came from the bottom of his heart spread to every cell in his body. Tang Zheng kept his composure, and his expression did not change at all. He activated the hidden sword, and the power of the Tai Chi two forms sword art was fully displayed in an instant. The sword lights that were dancing in the air did not disappear. Instead, they circled in the sky and formed a huge Tai Chi yin-yang fish in the blink of an eye. One bright and one dark, mutually reinforcing and harmonious, flickering with radiance, covering the five-finger mountain. Rise! Tang Zheng let out another muffled shout, and the hidden mystic sword disappeared. Yes, the hidden mystic sword disappeared from Tang Zheng's hand as if it had never appeared. Yan Qingyi suddenly realized that something was wrong and became alert. Her eyes widened, as if she wanted to see what kind of trick Tang Zheng was playing. Hidden mystic sword, slash! Tang Zheng roared, and a shining giant sword flew out from the Tai Chi yin-yang fish, and slashed directly at the five-finger mountain. Oh no! Facing the brilliant sword power, Yan Qingyi secretly shouted, and activated her mana, and the five-finger mountain became bigger and heavier. The hidden mystic sword rushed to the sky, and the five-finger mountain fell from the sky. One rose and one fell, and they were at each other's throats, like sworn enemies. Puff! The hidden mystic sword pierced through the five-finger mountain, and the five-finger mountain stopped abruptly in the air. The light of the hidden mystic sword also dimmed until it completely disappeared, and it fell back into Tang Zheng's hand lightly. The Tai Chi yin-yang fish also disappeared. Everyone's eyes were focused on the five-finger mountain, and they wondered what this giant palm would become. Yan Qingyi's face became pale, and her eyes dimmed. Boom! With a loud noise, the five-finger mountain exploded, rolling up the air and the sky, and a giant whirlpool appeared in the air, as if it was going to shatter the sky. This huge scene deeply shocked everyone. Puff! A mouthful of blood was spat out from Yan Qingyi's mouth, and she was on the verge of collapse. In the end, she could not hold on, and fell from the sky. Tang Zheng's eyes were sharp, and his body flashed and caught her, and at the same time, he immediately used his divine ability to imprison her. Yan Qingyi wanted to struggle, but the damage she received from this attack was quite heavy, and there was no way to resist, and could only let Tang Zheng imprison her. Her face was pale as she looked at Tang Zheng, who was close by, and weakly said, "You are bringing this world to destruction, do you know that?" Tang Zheng was unmoved, and calmly said, "I only know that if you open the space door, and let the people from the sky beyond heaven come to our world, then it will truly lead to the destruction of the world." No. Yan Qingyi stubbornly shook her head. "I will destroy the sky beyond heaven, and not give them a chance to take advantage." Tang Zheng heard this, and could not help but laugh, and said jokingly, "You can't even beat me, and you still have the confidence to destroy the sky beyond heaven? I also don't know where your confidence comes from. Maybe it's because you don't understand the sky beyond heaven at all, and only heard rumors, so you don't know the power of the sky beyond heaven, and think that you can destroy a world with your own strength. Do you think you are a god?" Tang Zheng's series of questions made Yan Qingyi speechless, but from her reaction, it could be seen that she was not convinced at all. Tang Zheng did not care about this, and asked curiously, "What did you do when you disappeared? Why do you know the space law?" This was the question Tang Zheng was most concerned about. Ever since returning from the sky beyond heaven, Yan Qingyi seemed incomparably mysterious, and her every move was puzzling. In particular, her actions just now deeply shocked Tang Zheng, and even though the battle had ended, Tang Zheng's mood did not calm down. Yan Qingyi turned her head, and completely ignored him. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes, but there was nothing he could do. He could not really do anything to her, after all, other than being a member of the Yan family. She also had the Emperor of Heaven in her body. "Tell the Emperor of Heaven to come out, I have something to talk to him about. His daughter has been taken away." Tang Zheng changed the topic and said, "The Emperor of Heaven, you can't even see." Yan Qingyi said confidently, but before she could finish, she stopped, and her face suddenly changed, and a dignified voice came out from her mouth. "My daughter was taken away by who?" To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1447. Who took my daughter? Hearing this voice, Tang Zheng's expression froze. This was clearly the voice and tone of the Emperor of Heaven. It seemed like his plan had succeeded. He had just thrown out the news of the Empyrean fairy's capture in hopes of waking up the Emperor of Heaven. Although he didn't know what the relationship between Yan Qingyi and the Emperor of Heaven was, but now that Yan Qingyi was injured and imprisoned, she was at her weakest state. If she was stimulated by this news, the Emperor of Heaven might be awakened. He made the right bet and stared at Yan Qingyi with a burning gaze. At this moment, Yan Qingyi's aura changed greatly. She had become another person, the Emperor of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven asked, "Who took my daughter? Who has the guts?" His aura was fierce and he couldn't hide his anger. Tang Zheng let out a long sigh and said regretfully, "She was taken away by Qiyu." Qiyu? The Emperor of Heaven turned pale with fright. "Is it that Qiyu from the ancient era?" "Yes. He's actually still alive." The Emperor of Heaven was a figure after Qiyu, so he naturally heard of Qiyu's great name. Although he knew how powerful he was, he still flew into a rage. "No matter who he is, since he dared to take my daughter, he and I cannot exist under the same sky. Emperor of Heaven, don't worry. Qiyu took her to force you to appear and subdue you." Tang Zheng was well aware of Qiyu's plan and directly pointed it out. The Emperor of Heaven stared blankly for a moment before laughing wildly. "How laughable. He actually wants me to serve him. What a daydream." Tang Zheng had already guessed the Emperor of Heaven's reaction and said, "Qiyu's wild ambition, we naturally can't let him succeed. Not only do we have to save the Empyrean fairy, but we also have to ruthlessly attack Qiyu." The Emperor of Heaven's eyes flashed with sparks as he said fiercely, "I want to kill him." The Empyrean fairy was his reverse scale. If anyone dared to harm the Empyrean fairy, he would definitely give them the heaviest revenge. "Where is Qiyu?" the Emperor of Heaven asked. Tang Zheng looked at Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian nodded and said, "We already have a rough location." Qiyu's whereabouts were not that easy to investigate. This was the result of the Li Palace's painstaking investigation. "Where?" the Emperor of Heaven asked. Li Xiaotian did not answer. Instead, he looked inquiringly at Tang Zheng. The Emperor of Heaven saw that he had been ignored and was filled with anger, but he had nowhere to vent it. Tang Zheng understood the Emperor of Heaven's feelings and calmly advised, "Emperor of Heaven, calm down. The Empyrean fairy is not only your daughter, but also my friend. I will do my best to save her. With me here, there's nothing for you to do." The Emperor of Heaven did not appreciate it at all. "This is our family's matter. You are not a member of my family and have no right to interfere." Tang Zheng was not angry. These words were mixed with a lot of personal emotions. Back then, the Emperor of Heaven had tried to matchmake Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy, but Tang Zheng had flatly refused. This made the Emperor of Heaven very angry. Tang Zheng had inherited the Heavenly Book's legacy, but he did not marry the Empyrean fairy. In the eyes of the Emperor of Heaven, this was already abnormal. If it was in the past, Tang Zheng would definitely not have gotten away with it. Now, the two of them could live in harmony. This could already be considered the Emperor of Heaven's great benevolence. How could Tang Zheng stay out of this matter? The Empyrean fairy had helped him too much. The relationship between the two of them had long been extraordinary. Naturally, he would not sit idly by and do nothing. Hurry up and tell me, where the hell is Qiyu? The Emperor of Heaven impatiently asked Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian still did not say a word. The Emperor of Heaven was about to go berserk. Tang Zheng quickly took over the conversation and said, "We'll go with you. We'll go find Qiyu immediately." The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng like lightning. Tang Zheng's expression was the same as usual. He did not compromise at all. In the end, the Emperor of Heaven had no choice but to compromise. Okay, then let's go. Although the Emperor of Heaven's strength was unpredictable, Tang Zheng was not the same as before. He also had Xiao Bai and Li Xiaotian to help him. He was not afraid of the Emperor of Heaven. Tang Zheng and the other two returned to the somersault cloud together. The Emperor of Heaven did not go up. Instead, he flew on his own and kept pace with the somersault cloud. Whoosh whoosh. Both parties drew two trails in the air and disappeared into the horizon. Only the huge five-fingered mark was left as a witness to the great battle. Qiyu was furious. Someone actually came to provoke him. He had already lost several subordinates. This person's background was not small. The most important thing was that he did not even know who the enemy was. That brat Tang Zheng is dead. Who else dares to be so blind as to come here and die? Qiyu was furious. Suddenly, a person flew in hurriedly and shouted in panic, "Report, the enemy is here again." Damn it. Qiyu heavily punched down, hitting the armrest of the chair. The chair immediately cracked inch by inch, like a spider web, and collapsed. Qiyu flew up lightly, looking down at his unsettled subordinate from above. He said, "This time, I will definitely make him unable to return. I want to see who it is." With that said, Qiyu had already disappeared from the hall. In the next second, he appeared in the blue sky. A mysterious force descended from the sky, enveloping the surrounding land. Qiyu's pupils constricted, and said, "This again, humph, you actually dare to set up an inescapable net for me, break for me." A sword flew out and soared into the sky. Sword light filled the sky, illuminating this part of the world. War Soul Sword. The War Soul Sword let out a high-pitched sword cry, as if it wanted to drink blood. Rays of red light appeared on the sword's body, as if it was fresh blood. The War Soul Sword rushed into the sky, and the blue sky seemed to be pierced by this sword. Puff! The War Soul Sword stopped, and a mysterious force enveloped the sky, blocking the War Soul Sword. A strong airflow immediately appeared around the War Soul Sword. This was the side effect of the collision between the War Soul Sword and the mysterious force. This was the first time Qiyu had exchanged blows with an opponent, and he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. This probing attack had indeed found a result. His opponent was unfathomable. He was very clear about the power of the War Soul Sword, but it did not break the opponent's sacred art in an instant. This really did not make sense. After all, he really could not think of any other expert in this world who could contend against him. "I don't believe that I, Qiyu, will be afraid of your little tricks. I, Qiyu, have seen all kinds of powerful experts." War Soul Sword, charge. The War Soul Sword soared Qi sword, and with a pu sound, it pierced through the invisible binding force and finally soared into the sky. Then, with a flash, it returned to Qiyu's hands. Qiyu held onto the War Soul Sword, his heartstrings trembling. Only he knew how difficult this attack was. However, he was still calm and composed as he mocked, "Who are you? Hiding your head and showing your tail, you're just a dog." "Dog? Humph, that's you talking about yourself. You don't dare to fight me head-on, but you specifically deal with my subordinates. You're the real dog who hides his head and shows his tail. A loud and clear voice came from the sky, spreading to every corner. Everyone could hear it clearly. Ji Wuxiang. Qi Yu immediately recognized the voice. After all, he had stayed in Tang Zheng's body for so long, and under the influence of his surroundings, he was naturally no stranger to Ji Wuxiang's voice. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1448. Ji Wuxiang saw that Qi Yu recognized his voice and was not surprised. He said with killing intent, "It's me." Qi Yu said disdainfully, "I was wondering who it was. So it's just a small martial artist seeking death. Today, I'll fulfill your wish. Kill me? Let's see who dies first." Ji Wuxiang didn't explain too much. As soon as he finished speaking, he launched an endless barrage of attacks like a tide. The power of the stars was mighty and mighty, descending from the sky. Although it was broad daylight, the sky was still flickering with the light of the stars. It was as if there were many eyes in the sky, flickering and watching everything on the ground. "Heavenly chess, attack!" Ji Wuxiang roared. From all directions, there was no hole that could not be penetrated. One attack after another arrived above Qi Yu's head. Qi Yu immediately sensed this attack. His expression was cold as he felt it very deeply. However, he did not receive any substantial damage. But the other 9 Li tribesmen were not so lucky. They were pressed down by the mighty power of the stars and were unable to stand upright. Qi Yu took a deep breath. Only then did he understand the power of this so-called heavenly chess. Back then when he was in Tang Zheng's body, he had experienced the heavenly chess. However, with his arrogant nature, he did not put this so-called heavenly chess in his eyes. Now it seemed that he had underestimated the heavenly chess and also underestimated Ji Wuxiang. Immediately, Qi Yu's heart became serious. His gaze was like lightning as he stared at Ji Wuxiang. The War Soul sword in his hand burned brightly. With a low roar, the War Soul sword split into 9 and transformed into 9 sword lights that flew into the sky. Although he did not see any trace of Ji Wuxiang, he believed that the other party must be at a certain location. Qi Yu used his own unique skill, 9 Shaman Sword Technique. The War Soul sword split into 9. 9 sword lights seemed too little, but their speed was extremely fast. In a blink of an eye, the entire sky was swept by this sword light. Puff puff puff, the air was completely pierced by the sword light. The blue sky became riddled with holes, which was extremely terrifying. Under the blue sky, there was no place to hide. Finally, when the sword light flew past a place, the air fluctuated violently. The air surged in all directions, and a figure finally appeared. Ji Wuxiang. Qi Yu immediately locked onto this figure and blurted out his name. "You've finally shown yourself. Let's see where you can hide now." Qi Yu excitedly activated his magic, and 9 sword lights flew towards Ji Wuxiang from all directions. They were like a hot knife through butter, with the power of ghosts and gods. Ji Wuxiang looked at the War Soul sword that was about to arrive in the blink of an eye. His eyes seemed to flash with lightning as he muttered something and raised both of his hands into the air. Crack! A thunderclap resounded through the clouds and shook the earth. A huge amount of star power immediately fell from the sky and gathered in his hand. Although this power was invisible, Qi Yu immediately sensed it. He did not retreat in the slightest. Instead, he used all his strength to activate the 9 Shaman Sword Technique. A stream of blood flew from his fingertip and landed on the War Soul sword. The War Soul sword shone with a red light and flew out of his hand. It merged with the 9 sword lights and transformed into an incomparably huge sword that traversed the heaven and earth. The heaven and earth seemed to be completely occupied by this sword light. Everything in sight was this huge sword. This vast and mighty aura was invincible, as if it could not be blocked at all. Ji Wuxiang's pupils shrank as his heart trembled. Qiyu was indeed Qiyu. Although it was tens of thousands of years later, his strength was still extremely terrifying. However, he was not frightened. After he waved the star power in his hand, a sharp sound that seemed to be able to shatter everything flew towards the huge sword that traversed the heaven and earth with an unstoppable momentum. Boom! Collision, loud sound. In the next second, there was no sound. Everything was silent. Actually, this was just an illusion. Because the sound was too loud, it caused people to temporarily lose their hearing. That was why they felt that there was no sound. But as far as his eyes could see, he could see everything clearly. After the two sides collided, the star power suffered from the recoil and scattered in all directions, forming a powerful shockwave. The mountain peak was instantly destroyed. The towering trees were uprooted and torn into countless pieces. At the same time, the sword light of the huge sword vibrated and turned into small sword lights. Tens of thousands of sword lights swept across the sky. The sky was riddled with holes. It was as if the sky could no longer be called the sky. It was more like a piece of clothing that had countless patches on it. This mountain range was completely flattened by this attack. Countless living beings in the mountains disappeared into thin air. The people of the 9 Li tribesmen were also greatly affected. The camp that they had painstakingly built was destroyed in an instant. Some of the weaker people were even directly killed. Wails and cries of ghosts and wolves were everywhere. When Qiyu saw this scene, the anger in his heart could be imagined. His attack that seemed to be sure to win actually ended up being evenly matched. Neither side could do anything to the other. How could this be? This was his territory. Facing someone who came to provoke him, he actually couldn't gain the upper hand. This was a great humiliation. Moreover, there were so many pairs of eyes watching. If he couldn't deliver a fatal blow to the strong enemy, it would be the greatest challenge to his dignity. You have some real skills, but this is far from enough. Qiyu flew high up, as if he was close to the top of the sky and looked down from above. Ji Wuxiang was not to be outdone. Like a rocket, the air under his feet made a loud sound. He also rushed to Qiyu's height and looked at him from afar. Both sides understood that this was an extremely difficult battle. Although Qiyu said it very nicely, he didn't take Ji Wuxiang seriously. However, in fact, his chances of winning were not so high, and the situation was not so optimistic. The two sides confronted each other. Only the sound of the wind blowing could be heard. It was oppressive and terrifying. There seemed to be sparks flashing in each other's eyes. Ji Wuxiang also truly experienced Qiyu's strength. Last time when Qiyu escaped, he thought that Qiyu was just a facade and not enough to be used as evidence. But from the blow just now, he was wrong. Last time, Qiyu had held back his strength. This was his true level. And this was not Dianan. The power of the celestial chess was not fully aroused. After all, the celestial chess was already very perfect in Dianan. But in this area, it was hastily arranged by him. The power could not be compared. But Ji Wuxiang did not retreat. Instead, he said aggressively, "Qiyu, last time I let you escape from Dianan. This time, I will not give you a second chance." Qiyu had already accumulated his strength and was ready to launch the second round of attacks. But after hearing this sentence, his eyes showed doubt and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? When did I go to Dianan? How could I escape? You don't admit what you have done. This is not Qiyu's style. It is also not in line with your identity." Ji Wuxiang said disdainfully. In his heart, he said that Qiyu was such a person. It seemed that the legend was indeed wrong. Well, it doesn't matter if you don't admit it. Anyway, today I will take revenge for my men. After a pause, Ji Wuxiang continued. This made Qiyu confused. In his heart, he thought, could it be that the other party was deliberately mystifying in order to distract his attention? But there was a problem, he wanted to get to the bottom of it. He persistently asked, "Ji Wuxiang, before we fight, let's make the problem clear. I admit that I killed your men, but when did I go to Dianan? Chi Yu's revenge plan against martial artists had already killed a lot of martial artists. Of course, Ji Wuxiang's men were among them. Therefore, Chi Yu did not deny this point. But he did not know that Ji Wuxiang was not referring to this matter at all. Ji Wuxiang saw Chi Yu deny again and again. He despised him even more and said disdainfully, "Since you admit that you killed my men, is it necessary to deny that you went to Dianan? Why is it not necessary?" Chi Yu angrily said. It took him a lot of effort to restrain his impulse to make a move. He said, "I, Chi Yu, dare to do and dare to take responsibility. The things I have done, I will not deny it. But the things I have not done, no one can pin the blame on me." What a righteous speech, but what you have done is the opposite of what you have said and done. It does not match at all. Ji Wuxiang laughed wildly in ridicule. Chi Yu's anger became more and more intense. He opened his mouth and roared like thunder, "I said that I have not been to Dianan, and I have not been there." Chi Yu's face was ferocious. His eyes emitted an ominous light, making people shudder. It was precisely this action that made Ji Wuxiang's heart startled. Ji Wuxiang's intelligence was rarely matched by anyone. Although he was full of anger and hatred, he was not completely blinded. From Chi Yu's reaction, he saw some clues. Could there be some inside story? He calmed down his anger and asked, "Chi Yu, let me ask you, have you really not been to Dianan some time ago? Dianan is not a good place. What would I do there?" Chi Yu said disdainfully. Chi Yu's contempt was not disguised. On the contrary, it was very realistic and revealed his nature. Ji Wuxiang immediately understood this point. His heart moved and he seemed to realize something. He quickly asked, "Then where are you?" "Of course I am here. I have always been here." Chi Yu pointed to the ground that had been raised to the ground and said coldly. Ji Wuxiang stared at Chi Yu, not letting go of the slightest change. In the end, he determined that Chi Yu was indeed not lying. Moreover, at this point, Chi Yu really did not need to lie. Ji Wuxiang's heart seemed to flash with lightning. He was shocked and said, "Chi Yu, you have not been to Dianan and have not fought with me, right?" "Of course." Chi Yu looked at Ji Wuxiang as if he was a madman. "Why would I fight with you? Who do you think you are?" This was Chi Yu's previous mentality. He did not put Ji Wuxiang in his eyes at all. Naturally, he disdained to fight with him. But at this moment, his mentality had changed. After Tang Zheng's death, Chi Yu admitted that no one in the world could threaten him. But now he had changed his mind. There was still Ji Wuxiang who could threaten him. Ji Wuxiang was not angered by Chi Yu's disdainful words. Instead, he was furious. He was fooled and kept in the dark. He was used as a gun to deal with Chi Yu. Ji Wuxiang, who thought he was proud and smart, was fooled like this. This made him angrier than Chi Yu killing his men. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1449. The anger in Ji Wuxiang's chest burned as if it was going to jump out of his pores. The voice in his heart roared, "Who is deceiving me like this and using me as a tool?" There was no answer. At least, with his intelligence system, he did not know the answer. But there was no doubt that this was a huge provocation to him. He absolutely could not tolerate it or sit idly by. He had to uncover the mastermind behind the scenes and make him beg for his life, but he couldn't die. Chi Yu looked at Ji Wuxiang's face, which seemed to have changed, and immediately realized the problem. He narrowed his eyes and asked curiously, "Did you find any clues?" Ji Wuxiang slowly raised his head. His eyes were gloomy and terrible. He said in a deep voice, "We have all been set up." "What, set up?" Chi Yu turned pale with fright. He did not understand what this meant. Ji Wuxiang saw Chi Yu's confusion and explained, "Someone disguised as you and went to Dianan to kill my people." He also fought with me, but he escaped. This sentence was simple and clear. Chi Yu immediately understood the cause and effect. It turned out that there was such a thing. No wonder Ji Wuxiang was so angry. The most important thing was, who was so bold as to disguise himself as him and frame him? Ji Wuxiang was shocked. If that person was not Chi Yu, but someone else, then this person's strength was really unfathomable. Because this person could not only transform into Chi Yu, but also the most important thing was that this person's fighting power could compete with Ji Wuxiang and even escape from him. Apart from Chi Yu, when did such a powerful person appear in the world? Who do you think this person is? Ji Wuxiang asked. Chi Yu's eyes kept changing, and his mind was full of thoughts. A bright light flashed in his mind, like lightning across the dark night sky, making people's eyes light up. He blurted out a name, 100 Faces Star Lord. Tang Zheng was dead. If there was anyone in the world who could transform into Chi Yu and have the strength to compete with Ji Wuxiang, then only 100 Faces Star Lord was possible. After all, 100 Faces Star Lord had been disappearing, which was not in line with his style. He would certainly not be silent. He would definitely wait for an opportunity to make a move and stir up trouble. Framing and killing with a borrowed knife, this was clearly the best strategy. It was indeed 100 Faces Star Lord's style. He liked to play with others in the palm of his hand, like playing with puppets. Ji Wuxiang immediately recalled this person. It wasn't that he hadn't come into contact with the 100 Transformations Star Lord before, and he had even fought with him before. Moreover, the return of the devil race was facilitated by the 100 Transformations Star Sovereign, which showed how daring he was. Instigating a fight between Chi Yu and Ji Wuxiang was indeed the style of Celestial Lord of 100 Faces. It's actually him. Didn't he disappear without a trace? Instead of hiding properly, he dares to come out and stir up trouble. He really doesn't know how to write the word death. Ji Wuxiang gnashed his teeth, unable to hide his anger. Chi Yu and 100 Faces Star Lord were from the same generation, so he understood him better. Back then, he dared to crash into Mount Buzhou, showing just how daring of a madman he was. Moreover, 100 Faces Star Lord had worked so hard to make the demons return because he wanted to take them for his own use. In the end, all of this was intercepted by Chi Yu. 100 Faces Star Lord's efforts were all for naught, so it was easy to imagine how angry he would be. He would definitely take revenge. This matter was definitely 100 Faces Star Lord's revenge. Chi Yu immediately filled in the details, completely believing that this was 100 Faces Star Lord's scheme. The pitiful 100 Faces Star Lord would never have dreamed that he would be implicated. If he knew the truth, he would probably fly into a rage and spit out 3 liters of blood. Tang Zheng would definitely not have thought that his plan would have such an unexpected effect, leading the flames of war to 100 Faces Star Lord. Where is 100 Faces Star Lord now? Chi Yu asked hatefully. He knew that Ji Wuxiang's intelligence work was very good, otherwise, he would not have found his hiding place. Although Ji Wuxiang did not think that 100 Faces Star Lord was the one who did it, he had always been in 100 Faces Star Lord's mind and had always ordered people to investigate his whereabouts. Therefore, maybe his subordinates would really find clues and find 100 Faces Star Lord's whereabouts. Even if he digs 3 feet into the ground, I have a way to dig him out. Ji Wuxiang said confidently. Chi Yu sneered, don't be too full of yourself. The key is to find 100 Faces Star Lord first. 100 Faces Star Lord is not an ordinary person. He is extremely cunning. If he dares to do such a daring thing, he must have thought of a way out. So what if he has a way out? I want to turn his way out into a dead end. Ji Wuxiang was unmoved and said with a murderous aura. Good. Chi Yu's eyes lit up and said with the same enemy, I want to turn all of 100 Faces Star Lord's ways into dead ends, so that he has no way out. Although the two were still in a life and death battle a moment ago, they reached a tacit consensus in this second. Both sides were still wary of each other and could not wait to get rid of each other. But regarding the matter of 100 Faces Star Lord, both of them could no longer tolerate 100 Faces Star Lord living in this world. They had to kill him. Ji Wuxiang looked deeply at Qi Yu and his heart moved. If he returned to Dianan and started to investigate Hundred Faces Star Lord's movements, he would definitely gain something. However, although he had the confidence to deal with Hundred Faces Star Lord alone, Hundred Faces Star Lord was not an ordinary person. Through the last battle, Ji Wuxiang had already determined this point. Therefore, if he had Qi Yu as a helper, there might be unexpected benefits. At the very least, he could divert Hundred Faces Star Lord's attention, so that he would have a better chance to deal a fatal blow to Hundred Faces Star Lord. The two of them hit it off, and Ji Wuxiang did not delay any longer. He immediately dialed Dianan's number and asked Yi Xuanji to track down Hundred Faces Star Lord's whereabouts. Not long after, Yi Xuanji's call came, and there was indeed a clue. Although Hundred Faces Star Lord's whereabouts never appeared again, there was one person who exposed her whereabouts, and that was Junko. This woman who followed Hundred Faces Star Lord wholeheartedly was almost like Hundred Faces Star Lord's shadow. As long as Junko was somewhere, Hundred Faces Star Lord would definitely not be too far away. When Ji Wuxiang heard this news, he immediately became excited. His intelligence system was not to be trifled with. Such important news was known in such a short time. As for the place where Junko exposed her whereabouts, there was also news, and that was the capital. Junko exposed her whereabouts in the capital, so Hundred Faces Star Lord must also be in the capital. The two of them involuntarily looked at each other, staring into each other's eyes, and immediately understood each other's thoughts. Go to the capital. The two of them also shouted in unison, expressing the determination in their hearts. The capital was not an ordinary place. It could be said to be a dragon's pool and a tiger's den, but in the eyes of the two of them, the capital was like their own backyard, coming and going as they pleased. A moment ago, they were still looking like they would not give up until they killed each other, but now they were facing the same enemy. The two of them looked at each other awkwardly, hiding it very well. In fact, they were very clear about each other's thoughts. If they killed Hundred Faces Star Lord, perhaps the two of them would return to a life and death situation. If they did not kill each other, they would definitely not feel at ease. After all, from the battle just now, both of them were very clear that the other was their lifelong enemy. If there was you, there would be no me, and if there was me, there would be no you. In the future, there would only be one of them in this world, the only supreme expert. At this moment, the compromise was just the calm before the storm. Qi Yu flew down and arranged the people. This place had been razed to the ground, and there was no way to continue to stay, so they had to find another place. The people gathered around, staring at him with burning eyes, waiting for his orders. The impact of the battle just now was too great, and many people's beliefs were even shaken. It turned out that Qi Yu was not the invincible person in this world, and there were still people who could compete with him. Qi Yu's eyes swept across the crowd like lightning, understanding their eyes and reading their thoughts. His eyes were awe-inspiring, full of majesty, and with an unquestionable tone, he said, "For the time being, you all retreat to our other secret stronghold, and in addition, you must look after this person for me." Looking in the direction of Qi Yu's finger, everyone's eyes fell on Empyrean Fairy. She was not injured in the earth-shattering battle just now, because there were people guarding her and saving her in time. The Empyrean Fairy looked up at Ji Wuxiang, then at Qi Yu and said, "Qi Yu, with such a powerful opponent, your good days are over." Qi Yu glanced at Ji Wuxiang from the corner of his eye and snorted, "Empyrean Fairy, don't be so complacent. If your father doesn't come to save you, then your existence is worthless." The Empyrean Fairy was unmoved, and said fearlessly, "Then hurry up and kill me." In the air, Ji Wuxiang's eyes were like an eagle's as they locked onto the Empyrean Fairy, and he exclaimed inwardly, "It's actually her." He was no stranger to the Empyrean Fairy. She had spoiled his plans time and time again, and he wanted nothing more than to get rid of her directly. Unfortunately, the Empyrean Fairy was not an ordinary person, and it would not be so easy to get rid of her. Tang Zheng is already dead, she is no more than a rootless duckweed. She is no longer important. Ji Wuxiang did not place the Empyrean Fairy in his eyes, so he did not act blindly without thinking. Qiyu gave his subordinates some more detailed instructions, and then parted ways, flying back to the capital with Ji Wuxiang. The next day, a white cloud floated over this messy plain, and there was a figure flying side by side with it. The white cloud landed on the ground, and Tang Zheng and the others jumped down. Just like the Emperor of Heaven, they stared at the ground in shock. What's going on? Li Xiaotian was the first to cry out in alarm. The intelligence had indicated that Qiyu's camp was in this area, and they originally thought that it would take a bit of effort to find the exact location. Who would have thought that what greeted their eyes was this messy plain? Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven both frowned at the same time, because they could feel traces of energy fluctuations coming from this piece of land. An extremely intense battle took place here. Tang Zheng was the first to speak. The Emperor of Heaven nodded in agreement. It was a battle between experts. If the Emperor of Heaven called someone an expert, then they were definitely peak-level experts. Tang Zheng's head moved, and he immediately thought of two people, blurting out, it was Qiyu and Ji Wuxiang. Chapter 1450. Tang Zheng bluntly pointed out that this was the result of the battle between Qiyu and Ji Wuxiang. The Emperor of Heaven was astonished, but he did not delve into it. Instead, he asked, then what about my daughter? This was the question he was most concerned about. Tang Zheng wrinkled his brow. He had no idea what the outcome of the battle was, and as for the whereabouts of the Empyrean fairy, he was even more clueless. He regretfully shook his head and said, I'm afraid we'll have to continue investigating. Heaven and earth flew into a rage. How can that be? If something were to happen to my daughter, would you be able to take responsibility? Tang Zheng helplessly rolled his eyes and said, I can't take responsibility. Her life is too important, and no one can take responsibility. But we will definitely find her. The Emperor of Heaven angrily wanted to retort, but Li Xiaotian had a bright idea and interrupted, don't be anxious. Perhaps I have a way. What method do you have? The Emperor of Heaven suddenly froze and stared at her with shining eyes. The Emperor of Heaven simply did not place Li Xiaotian in his heart, so he truly could not understand what method she had. Li Xiaotian confidently said, such a large battle will definitely attract the attention of many people. I've already sent disciples of the Li Palace to investigate, so they'll definitely have some clues. Really? The Emperor of Heaven anxiously asked, doubt appearing in his eyes. Li Xiaotian did not answer him, but instead looked at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng understood and nodded. Call the disciples of the Li Palace over. Li Xiaotian's lips curled into a beautiful arc. She raised her neck and a melodious voice came from her throat. This was the signal of the Li Palace. The voice traveled far, and not long after, a similar voice came from the distance, as if responding to her. A few silhouettes emerged from the distance and rushed out like a gust of wind, directly arriving in front of these people. Palace Master. The few of them took the initiative to bow to Tang Zheng respectfully. They looked very excited, obviously not expecting to see the Palace Master. Thank you for your hard work. Tang Zheng said amiably. It's no trouble at all. It's our honor to serve the Palace Master. Several people hurriedly lowered their heads and said respectfully. You were nearby just now. Did you find anything? What exactly happened? Tang Zheng asked directly. They immediately repeated what they had seen and heard in detail. The great battle just now had given them too much of a shock, and now that they recalled it, they still had lingering fears. When the others heard the details of the battle, they were shocked by Ji Wuxiang and Qiyu's profound power and powerful fighting strength. Although they were too far away to hear the conversation between Ji Wuxiang and Qiyu, Tang Zheng had already guessed something from their behavior. In the end, the two had not been able to reach a conclusion, but had instead reached a temporary compromise. This meant that they had definitely seen through Tang Zheng's plan to sow discord. They don't know that you're still alive, but they're heading toward the capital. What are they going to do? The Li Palace inwardly muttered, truly unable to see through their thoughts. Tang Zheng was suspicious. Even after racking his brains, he still couldn't figure out the whole story. Qi Yu and Ji Wuxiang couldn't guess that this was his plan, so they naturally wouldn't put this debt on the heads of the people around him. Could it be that they put this debt on the heads of other people? Li Xiaotian had a sudden inspiration as he pondered. Tang Zheng's eyes brightened. It's extremely possible. Then whose head will it be? They're going to the capital. In the capital, besides us, who else has the greatest power? Tang Zheng pensively asked. Chief. Li Xiaotian blurted out. Tang Zheng smiled and nodded. The chief's power was extremely strong and would definitely not sit by and watch these two grow stronger step by step. Thus, it really was possible that he had plotted to have them kill each other. Then what do we do? Li Xiaotian asked. Tang Zheng considered for a moment, then said, Chief is not an ordinary person, and his current strength is definitely incomparable to the past. Then let them fight. Immediately tell the family to be more careful and pay close attention to the movements in the capital. Don't invite trouble to yourself. They simply didn't know that the chief had long ago been transformed by the 100 Changes Star Lord. It was just that by a freak combination of factors, Qi Yu and Ji Wuxiang really did target the chief they spoke of. I don't care about other people. I only care about my daughter's safety. Where is she? The Emperor of Heaven impatiently interrupted the conversation. Where is the Empyrean fairy's whereabouts? Tang Zheng knew that the Emperor of Heaven was anxious, so he asked the Li Palace disciples. The Li Palace disciples had always been searching for the Empyrean fairy's whereabouts. Naturally, they wouldn't just watch as the Empyrean fairy disappeared right under their noses. Our people have already followed them. They've set up camp in a place. The Empyrean fairy is among them. Hearing about his daughter's whereabouts, the Emperor of Heaven became excited and impatiently asked, Then where is she? Tang Zheng took over and said, You guys lead us to find her. Yes. The few of them climbed onto the somersault cloud and chased after the Jiuli tribe. Although the Jiuli tribe had already left for nearly a day and were very far away, the somersault cloud was extremely fast. It didn't take long for the somersault cloud to catch up to them and float above their heads. Looking down from the sky, they could already see that the Jiuli tribe had set up camp. There were many Jiuli tribe members. These were all demons who had returned from the sky beyond heaven. Although they had suffered many casualties in the past few battles, they were still a huge force. The original leader of the demons, Saint King, had already been killed by Immerse. Now that Qi Yu had left, they were like a group of dragons without a leader. They didn't have any powerful experts. Qi Yu didn't think that there would be someone who would dare to sneak into his headquarters. It was like the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. The somersault cloud silently landed nearby. The few of them jumped off the somersault cloud. The Emperor of Heaven's eyes narrowed as he stared at the Jiuli tribe's camp. After a moment, he disdainfully said, You want to stop me with this insignificant defensive array? It turned out that the Jiuli tribe had already secretly set up a defensive array to prevent enemies from invading. It was a pity that this array could only defend against ordinary enemies. It was child's play in front of these experts. The Emperor of Heaven walked towards the camp on his own. From under his feet, spots of light spread out and rose into the air. The originally invisible defensive array immediately became visible. A wall blocked in front of everyone. It was covered with spots of light. Kacha. This light seemed to have a mysterious power. It disintegrated the invisible wall, causing it to collapse immediately. The few of them passed through the defensive array as if there was no one there. They went straight to the center of the camp. Because the other party had a hostage. Originally, the Emperor of Heaven had planned to attack by force. However, Tang Zheng persuaded him not to. In order to prevent any accidents from happening to the Empyrean fairy, it was better to sneak in and find the Empyrean fairy first. The camp was very orderly. One couldn't help but sigh at the fact that the Jiuli tribe were not ordinary people. After all, they had experienced inhumane experiences in the realm beyond heaven. They had been beaten to a pulp by the people of the realm beyond heaven on more than one occasion, and had no choice but to find another place to set up camp. As such, they had long since mastered this ability. In the center of the camp, there was a large tent. Everyone locked onto this large tent and went straight in. When the few of them entered the large tent, they didn't even see a shadow of the Empyrean fairy, let alone a trace of the Empyrean fairy. Right at this moment, a wave of battle cries rang out from outside the large tent. Chapter 1451. The battle cries filled the sky, shocking several people. They looked at each other in dismay. Could it be that the enemy had already predicted their movements and came to catch them like turtles in a jar? It was a pity that these people were not turtles but flood dragons. They were not easy to catch. Let's go take a look. Tang Zheng took the lead and rushed out of the large tent. The outside was already covered in fog and they could not see the enemy clearly. They could only hear battle cries coming from the fog. You dare to barge into the 9 Li tribe's camp. You don't know how the word death is written. Tang Zheng had already changed his appearance to prevent the other party from recognizing him and then informing Qiyu. Now that Qiyu and Ji Wuxiang did not think that he was the culprit, he naturally would not expose himself. The Emperor of Heaven's eyes were like torches as he fiercely stared at the fog and said, "A group of scoundrels, hiding their heads but showing their tails. Quickly hand over my daughter." Hearing such a young woman say such words with such an imposing aura, the 9 Li tribe people could not help but be shocked. However, they were cultivators after all and had seen many strange things. In the next second, they were not surprised and fiercely said, "A group of madmen, actually daring to come to the 9 Li tribe and ask for her. Let's kill them first." So. Several rays of light shot out from the fog and were abnormally dangerous. The Emperor of Heaven took a large step forward and casually waved his hand. A gust of wind blew past and these dangerous rays of light disappeared without a trace. The Emperor of Heaven went to the edge of the fog and reached out with his hand. A large piece of the fog was torn off and a large gap appeared. Several people flew out from behind the fog. The Emperor of Heaven's 5 fingers closed together and fiercely squeezed. Pang, pang, pang. In the midst of the explosion, several people exploded into pieces. This smooth and ruthless move shocked the 9 Li tribe people and made them realize how strong the enemy was. However, they did not retreat. Only a moment of silence came from the fog. It was so silent that it gave people a formless pressure. Tang Zheng suddenly had an idea and said, "They're setting up a formation." From Mo Xia, he had obtained a lot of knowledge about refining artifacts. Among them, there were also a lot of knowledge about formations. In terms of formations, he had gained a deeper understanding. Therefore, he immediately noticed the abnormality. As expected, they are setting up a formation. The Emperor of Heaven looked deeply at Tang Zheng and also sensed the 9 Li tribe's intentions. But in his heart, he was extremely surprised. Tang Zheng's attainment in martial arts was so profound, it was a world of difference from last time. He must have had a fortuitous encounter during this period of time. I'll break the formation. Xiao Bai was eager to make a move. He took the lead and rushed out. Boom! He spat out a ball of flame from his mouth. The flame quickly grew and exploded in the air, turning into small fireballs that flew into the fog. Whoosh! Whoosh! Rays of light flew out from the fog and intertwined to form a mysterious pattern in the air. A mysterious power surged out and quickly intercepted the fireball. However, the power of the fireball was too great. It immediately destroyed the barrier of the mysterious power and fell from the sky. Boom! 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 It sounded like cannonballs hitting the ground. Sparks flew everywhere and screams immediately rang out. Many gaps appeared in the fog. The 9 Li tribe finally exposed their whereabouts. Xiao Bai jumped up and landed in the gap. With a wave of his hand, his fingernails were as sharp as knives and quickly reaped the lives of the people. The enemy's formation was already in chaos. There was nothing to worry about. Tang Zheng and the rest did not wait and watch. They all launched their attacks. The fog was completely stirred up and it was difficult to continue. Retreat, retreat! The Nine Li tribe shouted. With the help of the last bit of fog, they fled in all directions like stray dogs. Tang Zheng did not expect to catch all of the Nine Li tribe in one fell swoop. Seeing that they were escaping, he quickly reached out and caught one of them. The other party struggled with all his might. However, when he fell into Tang Zheng's hands, he could not escape at all. Tang Zheng did not waste any words. His 5 fingers closed together and grabbed the top of the other party's head. He used a soul-searching technique. Everything in the other party's brain surged out like a tide. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. He had captured the information that he had thought of. Ji Wuxiang and Qi Yu had seen through his scheme. It was not completely as described by the disciple of the Li Palace. There was actually an even deeper inside story. Qi Yu and Ji Wuxiang had placed this debt on the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. This was very different from what they had expected. It was a pleasant surprise. It turned out that the 100 Faces Star Sovereign was also hiding in the capital. That was why they had rushed straight to the capital. He raised his eyebrows and revealed a pleased expression. Ji Wuxiang and Qi Yu had been toyed with in the palm of his hand. This sense of accomplishment was not something that could be compared to ordinary things. There was also another point, the Empyrean fairy's whereabouts. She had not remained in the camp, but had been taken away on the way. He did not know what Qi Yu was thinking, but he had actually returned and taken her away. Perhaps he believed that she was extraordinarily important. As for the Nine Li tribe laying down a large formation and waiting for rabbits, this was also a coincidence. Since the enemy dared to scheme against Qi Yu and Ji Wuxiang, they could not rule out other methods. Qi Yu had not personally overseen the camp. Worried that the enemy would attack, he had his subordinates lay down a large formation as a precaution. He had not expected that this formation would run into Tang Zheng's group. It was just a pity that the formation was too weak in front of these people. It was simply unable to trap them. After understanding the sequence of events, Tang Zheng could not help but feel somewhat disappointed. He had originally believed that he could track down the Empyrean fairy and successfully rescue her. However, Qi Yu had interfered and taken her away. It seemed that there was no need to continue the chase. They had to quickly rush to the capital and take advantage of the fact that something had happened to the Empyrean fairy to rescue her. Seeing that the others were still chasing after the Nine Li tribe, Tang Zheng immediately shouted, "Do not chase after a cornered enemy." Everyone subconsciously stopped in their tracks and turned to look at him. The Emperor of Heaven indignantly said, "They dared to take away my daughter. I will make them die without a burial ground." Tang Zheng earnestly advised, "Emperor of Heaven, do not be anxious. I already know where the Empyrean fairy is." The Emperor of Heaven was shocked and quickly asked, "Where is she?" "The capital. In order to avoid any accidents, we must quickly go to the capital. As for these defeated generals, they are not a cause for concern. We cannot waste time on them." The Emperor of Heaven thought for a moment and immediately changed his mind. He urged, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's quickly go to the capital." It was clear that compared to his daughter's safety, these defeated generals were almost negligible. Hearing the Emperor of Heaven say this, Xiao Bai, Li Xiaotian, and the others all stopped and no longer chased after them. They all looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. Tang Zheng made the final decision and said, "Then we will go to the capital now." At the same time, he was also thinking that if he really encountered Qi Yu and Ji Wuxiang, the news of him faking his death would not be able to be hidden. After all, the other party was not stupid. Adding on the fact that Xiao Bai and Li Xiaotian were by his side, it would be easy for them to connect the dots. But this did not matter. As long as he could save the Empyrean fairy, he would not hesitate to expose himself. Moreover, the inner demons had been hiding in the capital. The battle of the capital would definitely involve them. After all, the inner demons had promised him to deal with Chiyu. They would definitely not go back on their word. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.